Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of the Luckycast. I'm your host, DeoxysPrime, and joining me tonight, let's see, is Matt here?
Yep.
Is Frank here?
Madame, Monsieur, bonsoir.
You know, I thought you were going to use a different intro this time. You're getting a little old.
I can't beat Galko-chan. Like, come on.
Well, except for the other 9 episodes where you didn't do that. But,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I haven't been on the other 9 episodes.
Oh,
I'm a recent addition.
I guess we're at a stalemate. So, is Funk here?
No.
Okay. Is Collin here?
It's gonna be okay.
Is Venom Kenny here?
No, but the DARPA chief is.
How does he know this?
He came up with his own meme. He's doing it a lot lately. We
He's
can't
learning.
We can't stop him.
This is Kenny. Hi.
I think that covers everyone. So, today we're going to talk about the winter 2016 anime season.
Yeah.
This podcast is largely going to cover stuff that we actually finished. So if you want to go listen to all the garbage we dropped, you can go check out our mid-season podcast.
Link in the description, right, Steve?
Where would someone click if they want to go to that link, Funk?
Right on the appropriate time code.
Thank you very much. So you guys want to talk about anime?
No.
Yes.
Okay.
Begrudgingly? Okay. Well,
Before we started, Steve said, we're getting a lot more professional. I really like it. Yes, do you want to talk about anime? Unanimous no.
well, Frank, you're the first one who gets to talk about anime.
I am, actually.
One of the season's biggest shows. Why don't you tell us about Erased?
Erased, we covered it for just a bit in the mid-season podcast because I was ranting and raving over it. Just how amazing and atmospheric both the narrative was and the actual show itself was. As the show started to get a little more heavy in terms of the actual mystery element, as it reached towards a brisk conclusion, I know a lot of people were very disillusioned, especially in comparison with the manga. And as someone who actually went back and read the manga, I still thought that the conclusion was fairly satisfying.
But you watched the anime first, right?
Yeah, well, but I don't think that colored my opinion of the anime ending very much, because I still enjoyed the manga ending very much for what it was. But as a conclusion, I think what happened in the anime actually worked very well. And I was curious to hear if you guys had actually read the manga. I don't know. Do you think I should spoil it? I mean...
Well, I mean, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
I'll just let everyone know, because we're going to spoil the shit out of this show in every show, so...
Okay.
I watched the show, but I only spoiled the manga for me.
Because we were very when we went over it in the mid-season podcast, we were very careful to avoid spoilers because it's a show that's really best experienced blind.
Yeah, and that was a recommendation, and this is basically, we're reviewing it now, so...
Okay.
Frank, if you were blind, how could you read the subtitles?
Nothing but the highest quality jokes on the most. No, but I know that for the casual observer, a lot of people were also a little upset with the execution of Yashiro being the killer, which is something that I didn't necessarily have a problem with. I know that if you were to go on ANN right now and see a review for episode 10, that nice giant D staring you in the face.
He got a little butthurt.
He was very butthurt, and I don't know why. I mean, I guess I can... The reason why he said it was, not necessarily because of why, it wasn't because Yashiro was the killer as much as it was because the way they did it with, his bright red eyes and him saying, oh, this is my true form and shit.
I don't think you said true form.
He did say that.
Oh, did he?
Yes,
Okay.
did.
Well,
That's kind of weird, because everybody in the show gets red eyes at some point. That doesn't really mean that he's the killer. That just meant, murderous intent.
Yeah, in the car scene, his eyes went all red because it matched how he was depicted in the future scenes where he had red eyes.
You don't think red eyes meaning murderous intent is not the hokiest thing ever?
No. I was.
It is.
It's okay when Assassination Classroom does it.
Absolutely I hated the red eyes in this show.
that's fine.
They laid it on way too thick.
I mean,
It was sparse enough.
my biggest problem with the show is that it did lay on a lot of things that were
The show doesn't really have much in the way of a sense of subtlety.
But
No.
when it is subtle...
I think it does, but...
I want to disagree with you there because when it does have its moments where it could be very subtle, and those moments do work pretty well in its favor. But sometimes it just lays it on really, really thick. And the other thing that I want to get into the manga a little bit more, because the manga does a very good job of getting into Yashiro's backstory, whereas the anime only tells his experience with Spice the hamster.
Well, that's its name.
Yeah, he said he named the hamster Spice.
Okay, I don't remember all the trivial details, Frank.
Well, I guess it's more fresh for me because I just read the manga and they got into that a little bit too. But there are some elements that they brought up in the anime that you really wouldn't be able to get with just the anime alone. Like Yashiro's backstory is a big one. Another one is in the last episode, Yashiro says it was the second time you had foiled one of my kidnappings, and because the first being with what the hell? With Kaio. Yeah, he said the second was Kaio, and he was saying before that there was a prior instance of a kidnapping that he was going to do that Satoru stopped, and that's just completely brushed aside in the anime. But in the manga, they get into there was an experience that he had with a girl in 4th grade, and Satoru saved her from a trap that was set by Yashiro. So.
Huh.
I mean, it's different, but I mean, at the same time, I don't necessarily think it's good to focus on stuff like that, because you have to judge it on its own.
But why even have him say a line like that if it's completely going to be irrelevant in the anime, if you're taking the anime by itself?
That's true.
I just don't think a lot of these things necessarily play into the story they're trying to tell in the anime. So, I mean, it's nice if you want to get some interesting details, and that's a lot of times that's why I'll go and read a source material.
I think I highly recommend reading the manga, at least from chapter like 31 onward. If you want to know a little bit more about Yashiro, if you want to know about the alternate way he gets his memories back, because in the manga, Irie is actually the one that gets him his memories back, whereas in the anime he gets it back through touching Kaio's baby, which is kind of cute because the baby's name is literally Mirai, which means future. So it's like, but you know, that's another thing. Like I said, it can be subtle when it wants to.
You call that subtle?
How?
No,
It didn't. Well, it doesn't throw it in your face.
But that does throw it in your face.
I don't think it does.
The baby named Future.
I actually,
Just because they say it doesn't mean they're throwing it in your face, though.
I mean, it's it might not seem like such an obtuse thing, but just imagine this show was written in English and they named the baby Future.
But
you don't
Mirai,
think that's sticking out?
Mirai is such a common Japanese name, especially in anime.
Okay, well, they named the baby Hope.
Which is a common English name. Like,
Yeah,
this
but
stuff
it's still,
happens.
That'd still be laying it on thick, right?
No, it wouldn't.
You guys suck.
It's not like it's a made-up name.
It could be, so it doesn't have to be made up to be way too obvious and in your face.
We're sticking on the baby's name a little too
Well,
much.
yeah, because because that's the thing that I kind of observed with the show is like people really get caught up in the small details of the show, which I don't really think are important. I want to talk about one of the bigger things, and Frank kind of alluded to it, like just how the show handles the identity of the killer and Yashiro in general. Because like this show wants you to make you think it's a mystery, but it's really not a mystery show, and in fact it makes like no real attempt to hide the mystery. The direction of the show tips its hand very early of who Yashiro is and what he's going to do. Which is the reason why Collin texted me after every episode saying, "I'm pretty sure Sensei is behind it all." Thank you, by the way.
So,
But the mystery in the show isn't really for us; it's for the characters. And I like that they made the identity of the killer obvious from the get-go, because what it does is the show kind of planted this idea in your mind of like, is it really that obvious?
Well, yeah, because he's covered in red herrings, basically.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
but at the same time, it's like, who else could it be? Right?
No, but like I'll get to that. But like, here's why I think that works. Is because in the end, it really was that obvious, and there really wasn't else much going on here. You know, Sensei was behind it all. But I like that the fact that the show does keep you guessing of its motives, because it wants you to put yourselves in the shoes of Satoru. Like in the same way, like I think we all kind of had that feeling, maybe to different extents, of like we really don't want this to be as obvious as it seems. And the show wants you to feel like that because Satoru is like asking himself the same thing. Like the clues to the killer's identity is like in front of him the whole time. But he doesn't want to admit that's a possibility. Because the show does a great job of presenting Yashiro as like a really believable good person. Like through his actions. Like the direction obviously tells you differently. But his actions are very genuine. Like to borrow one of Funk's favorite terms, I don't think the show portrays Yashiro as a mustache twirling villain. I think that would have ruined a lot of it. You know, it like Frank said, it's a little over top at times, but I think when it needs to be, when it needs to drive a point home. But for the most part, it keeps him very grounded and believable. And like it takes great pains at times to paint him in a positive light.
It does a good job at presenting him as like a father figure potentially to Satoru, and he even says as much in the end.
Yeah,
he says, "You were the father I never had," basically.
And the one moment I really liked is like this show had the most obvious red flag ever when like all the candy spills out of the glove compartment of his car, and it's like but he gives like a very believable and human explanation for why that candy's there.
But do you buy it? Does anyone buy it? Like,
it's not about buying it. Like it's more about that. Satoru can believe that to a certain extent. Like
I think it's more that he wants to believe it badly.
But that is my larger point. But the thing is, like if it came out and he wasn't the killer, like if Yashiro wasn't the killer, everything that would have painted him the killer was also believably explained that he could not be the killer. So it's taking the time to work that in. It's making him a very human character. And in the end, I liked the feeling of being put into Satoru's shoes, of not wanting to believe he was the bad guy. I knew he was the bad guy all along, but I didn't want to believe it, and he didn't want to believe it. And I think that's a great triumph of the writing of the show.
I don't think that's how it really happened in the show. That explanation would work if at any point in the series prior to the revelation, quote unquote, that Satoru questioned whether or not Sensei was actually the killer. But we never get any like inner monologue of him suspecting Sensei or tying him to any of the evidence. He's just blissfully unaware of it. Yeah. You can look into it and assume that maybe he might have that thought and is pushing it aside. But as it stands, he completely buys the lollipop explanation.
At one point,
all the evidence that comes up, and maybe this is a manga thing, but in the anime, he does never ever suspect Sensei until Sensei reveals.
But then
himself.
I think that ruins the reveal if you're being too obvious about that.
Right, but the thing is, you said it yourself, Steve, that this show is not really a mystery, and I agree with you, but just run with that.
But no, it's a mystery. It's a mystery to Satoru. It's not a mystery to us.
But
like he has the clues that he needs to figure out, and like. He does, but he doesn't want to believe it, and I think
that's not in the show. Him not wanting to believe it is not something that's actually in the show.
But it is. He comes out and says it, and I think that reveal is what what sells it in the end.
He does come out and say it in episode 10. He's like, "Oh, well, I mean, I saw Yashiro's name on the list of potential suspects, but because my mom's name was also on that list, I just completely put it aside."
Yeah, it was there.
This was not pointed out to the audience at that time.
Yes,
yes, it was.
It is such a cop-out.
But it shows you the list. You can see his name there.
I don't think that even correlates or matches the point that you're making. That's him doubting the credibility of the list, not the credibility of Sensei being the killer. Like, it's a different point. Like, it's not... there's... What am I trying to say here? It's just a little bit of nuance in how it's different, but it's not the same exact point. And I think you're reading too much into it.
Go ahead,
if I
Collin.
may, right now, regarding the mystery elements of the show, and how Steve claims that it's not really about the mystery, and I agree that it's not, that the mystery is not like what the crux of the show.
Right.
However, I do think that the intention was to keep the killer's identity hidden and have it be a big reveal. And the reason why I feel that way is because from episode 1, we established that there was a man who was wrongly accused, and we established that the killer was someone Satoru's mom knew, meaning that the killer's identity is incredibly important to the plot. And I find it very strange how Satoru is not proactive at all in terms of trying to find out who the killer is, especially after he saved Kaio.
Yeah.
But he was still saving people.
In addition to that, there's also the scene when he goes back to the future, where he meets the journalist. He's a journalist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the journalist is also attempting to uncover the killer's identity. So the killer's identity is important, and I feel like they wanted to sprinkle in clues as to who the killer was, or even the original author, going all the way back to the manga, wanted to sprinkle in clues, but instead of putting in sprinkles, he put in, like, chocolate chunks, you know?
See, but that's the thing, is, like, he's not, like... He's trying to find the identity killer, but it's not his focus. His focus throughout the whole show is saving people from the killer. And that's why I don't think it's a mystery, because he's never actively trying to find the mystery.
Yeah,
Well,
I know,
was
but
thinking
like
how-
Wouldn't find out who the wouldn't finding out
once
who the
he
killer
saves
is.
Kaio, it's like a matter of guesswork. So
Yeah.
it would behoove him to start searching for the killer at that point.
But no, because
Wouldn't
it
finding
introduces
out-
more people he has to save, so his job is not done.
I know, but see, he doesn't as he saves each person, it gets murkier and the path to the killer gets murkier and murkier. So there should be some sense of brevity because he's running out of time to catch the killer.
But there
That's
is, because
why-
like right after he saves Kaio, like it almost immediately follows up with the reveal of the killer. Like there's not much time in between there.
I understand that, but he doesn't really note how important it is, especially
Yeah, he
since-
doesn't prioritize finding the killer as much as he prioritizes saving the rest of the victims that he
Yeah,
knows.
especially because when he warps back for that second time, they want to have this sense of finality to it, and we would have been able to understand that sense of finality more had we been beat over the head with the fact that it's going to be harder to find the killer the more people he saves. But instead, we're never really given any information on why it's so important that this is his last try.
Yeah.
Yeah, because during that one time he said, like, this is the last time I jump back in time, right?
I think that's just a thematic choice. Go ahead, Matt. We've been interrupting you, so
I'm sorry.
I was just
Yeah,
gonna
fuck
say
Matt.
in terms of that, I think that wasn't necessarily like a literal "this is the last time," more of a this like I'm pretty sure this is gonna be like the last chance I get, because he basically begged to go back, and I'm guessing like this is going to like if I have to go back, this is going to be my last shot. Not really a literal like this is all I have. Like this is my last thing before I have to,
Well, I mean, the idea is if he were to fail again and go back in time to this point where he is getting, because at that point he's getting arrested, right? And he's looking the killer in the eyes and saying, "This is the last time I go back in time." If he were to go back to that point where he's at right now, it's game over.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't he put all of his effort into going back, like making sure that he doesn't have to do this again? Right?
Yeah.
So I get what you're saying. Like thematically, yeah. I mean, maybe he can jump back again if he really wanted to. We're not sure whether or not it's actually the last time he can jump back in time. But at that stage of the game, if he loses now, it's game over for him. So he can't afford any more slip ups.
Just real quick before we jump onto another point. Just to revisit Collin's greater point, and forgive me if I'm getting the wrong impression from what you said.
Oh, you're probably going to get it wrong.
I'm probably going to get it wrong, but it feels like there's an inconsistency between the expectations the show sets up and how it's written initially, and then the way they write Satoru's motives later on, which creates the bulk of the problem.
And would you cite anything that spurred this on for you?
From you?
No, I guess for me, if you'd like, whatever.
Well, no, I mean, that's the... I don't want to say that's the impression that I get, but that's the impression that I get from what you were saying. But as for specific examples in the show, it's just how it kind of sets up... Because I also had the impression that it was going to be a mystery, and then he's not concerned with finding the identity of the killer, which is kind of flies in the face of the whole mystery, I don't want to say theme, but idea. So if they knew that that was not how it was going to go, maybe they could have written it at the beginning in a way that didn't kind of set up all these mystery tropes and expectations.
That's actually what I we may have had a discussion on this, and I may have noted that I hate making a complaint like this because it's about what I'd like the show to be rather than what it is. But for me, I think it may have been more interesting had we had the killer's identity revealed very early on, and it would have become a power play between Satoru and Yashiro, and Satoru is trying to make sure that he doesn't lead Yashiro on.
So almost like a Death Note, like cat and mouse game you're thinking of here. Like,
sure, yeah.
I don't think that works because it relies on like Yashiro not knowing anything about what Satoru is doing here, or his true nature.
The thing is that he does get suspicious towards the end. That's how he figures out Satoru.
Yeah, I mean that's at the end.
Yeah, I know, but like, wouldn't it be neat if he's like we had scenes of him piecing that together? Like,
not really. I think it works fine the way it's presented.
I think that this all could have been fixed just a bit if they had more named characters that could potentially be suspects. Because then you wouldn't be drowning in like the idea of it being Yashiro, you know.
That's
If
what
you
they
had
were,
more
they just had
characters
longer.
if you had more characters that it could potentially be, then you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I do, but I think it has enough, and I think like any more would take away from like what I felt about how they presented Yashiro. And I know you guys obviously have a disagreement here, but like that's the thing about this show that sold it to me at the end.
Getting off the subject, because this is obviously one of the broadest things you can talk about the show.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to kind of move off of it so we can diversify what we're discussing regarding a race.
Sure.
English title.
Call me a nitpicky nugget pants if you'd like. But I was somewhat vexed by how the time travel mechanics worked. And
God.
I'm going to only
Oh,
touch on
God.
this briefly because I know that the time travel is just a framing device and it's part of what made the show interesting. However, it bothered me that each time he travels back in time, there's a different reason for him going back. First time he's about to, or I guess the first two times, or I guess the first time is he prevents a death. The second time he prevents a kidnapping. The third time the death has already happened and he flips out and falls off a balcony and then he travels back in time. And then the last time he's just like, I really want to go back in time. Goes back in time.
And does a really, really weak scream.
Oh yeah, okay. And also I don't like this is gonna be a point of contention, but I don't like his voice actor.
I thought it was.
I thought he was great. It was just that one line was the only thing I didn't think he nailed.
That delivery almost it soured me on the whole performance.
Oh please, come on, Collin.
Come on, that's all it takes though.
I will say, I don't really think the whole time travel mechanics don't really matter because they're just a plot device, and
Yeah.
it just
And the story only works with it.
like I think it's good how they made it very clear that even Satoru has no idea why he has this power or how it works because it just happens at random before.
Mhm.
It just randomly happens to him, seemingly, and he has no real control over it. And then, like when he suddenly has control, it's just he really is in a big like shitty
Pile of
situation. Yeah, that's yeah. But I don't really think that matters.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't ruin the show for me or anything. It in fact doesn't even bring. It's not even what brought my score down for the show at all. I just wanted to note it so I can be nitpicky nugget pants.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it.
I will say one thing. I guess I'll kind of add on to something that might be also a little nitpicky. It's not, like I said this before, that a lot of my reasons for not really being super into the show isn't necessarily the show's fault, but more just me probably expecting something that I shouldn't have expected.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that the show, like I was expecting it to be very psychological and mystery oriented, and it's really mostly about Kaio. Like everything, it's mostly about her, and I guess one of the weakest aspects of the show, like for me, was that whenever she was not an element of what was going on, it was really boring.
Yeah,
And
I
like
100% agree.
I
Like,
completely disagree.
she was by far the most interesting character in the whole thing. And once she was out of the pic, like episodes, it was 5 and 6 where they go back to the future, the present, I guess. Really, they go back
The
to the
past
present.
for us.
Yeah,
Well, it's all the best
2006.
for us.
But yeah, those 2 episodes, I remember when I was watching them, I was like, I don't know really why, but I'm not really interested in what's going on. And then I realized it's because Kaio wasn't there.
The anime is very, very focused on Kaio, and if you were to actually read the manga, there are a lot more scenes where there's a bit more of a balance between Kaio and Irie.
That's kind of where I think this show would have been a lot better if it was 2 core instead of 1 core. And they
I think
actually
2 core would have been too long.
If
I
they
think-
maybe not 2 core, maybe like I don't know, like if
I-
it was
I
like
think
a
it
weird
said
number,
what it
like
had-
20 episodes.
Yeah, but I think it said everything it had to say in 12 episodes. Like there's nothing else I would add on to the show.
I could have used the one more. I think I could have really used the one more to like actually flesh out the ending the way.
Yeah,
the
even if it
manga
was
did
like
it.
13, maybe. Yeah, and also just I kind of without coming off. I'm gonna try. I want to say this without sounding pretentious,
Oh,
but
here we go.
Do
I
your
feel
best.
I feel like the show. I was expecting the show to be a little less entry level.
Oh.
If you know what I mean.
Oh,
Yeah,
boy.
that does sound pretty pretentious.
But like I guess I was expecting it to be a bit more weird, have a bit more going on than what we got.
It's not that heady.
And
no.
it's a very easy to swallow show. And I
I mean,
guess I was a little
I-
disappointed in how easy to swallow it was.
I think the fact that it was so grounded largely is why the show works. Like I like the fact that like it had this weird it had this weird time travel mechanic, but I mean that was the only thing that was really out of place, and that was just a plot device.
You know,
Everything else is so grounded and largely serious, but also punctuated with like very, very good heartwarming moments.
You know,
what they should do?
we've been harping on about this show for a little bit, and it's weird because I think Funk Matt and I like this show.
Yeah.
I did.
You would not get that impression listening.
I
I
really
mean,
liked. I really liked it. It's just
Um,
that.
I absolutely adored this show's depictions of childhood, even if Kenya
Yes.
is the most competent, understanding child who's ever existed.
Who reads Shakespeare?
Yes, but at the same time, I thought there was something very genuine and nostalgic about the depictions of childhood.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
enjoyed Satoru's character. I enjoyed that overarching theme of weakness not really being something that comes from not like physically or even emotionally weak, but weakness is something that comes about from being alone. And I believe there was an argument about whether or not it would be thematically appropriate for Satoru to die at the end. And I was very passionate about my disagreement regarding this.
I think you called me an idiot.
Yes, because the theme of the show was that not being alone and having friends and making human connections literally saves lives. And I thought that part of the show was something very touching, and I really enjoyed it.
Even
So
when the
there you
show,
go.
I think the show does that very. I'm sorry, am I interrupting someone?
Well, I
What-
was gonna say something, but you go on.
Okay, I was gonna say the moment where in episode 8, where Satoru's mom makes breakfast for Hinazuki. That was a fantastic moment, in my opinion. Like
That was one of the
When-
best parts of the show.
it was fantastic, and that's something that the manga really didn't do as well because that scene didn't go on for anywhere nearly as long. Which is
Oh.
where the pacing is a bit inconsistent if you were to compare it to the original manga chapters, but that's something I think the anime did for the better because that part where she looks at the breakfast and she just has flashbacks to her mom as her mom's attention like basically begins to wane to the point where the breakfasts that she get less and less complicated to the point where she gets money and then I was even starting to get that and breaks into tears like that. That's so emotionally like powerful, and I feel like moments like that are where the show's really at its strongest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually wanted to add the other like in that same episode, there's actually an anime original scene
Mhm.
where Sutter's mom and Kaio like go like they're like taking a bath together, and like they're just like playing around, like she starts tickling her. It's just this little cute heartwarming moment
Yeah.
that just really
And
I
why
like
did this?
that.
Why did this interest you?
it was cute. That's
It was.
It was
very
cute.
No, because like she starts to flinch at that point though. No, like
No, that's the part. That's the part where she like where the mom like goes to.
oh
pat her
right
on the
right
head.
right. I'm thinking of a different scene. My bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like she goes down to pat her on the head, and she thinks she's about to get slapped.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
And then, yeah, like that.
That was literally me.
That was a
Yep.
nice little detail too. But
Well, I hate to cut this short
Well,
because
I have one point to make.
go ahead because
I-
we could discuss the show for hours.
I've been waiting very patiently.
Go ahead, Funk.
So, the biggest point of umbrage that I took with this show
Oh God.
was that I think that aside from perhaps the first episode or the first two episodes, whenever the first cut back to the past happens, you could cut out all the future stuff and have a much better show. Or present stuff.
I disagree, but there's not enough time to
Well,
fight you on it.
Come
So.
on, can I not? Let me just explain why.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So, as Collin mentioned, the best parts of the show were everything that happens in the past. It was very heartwarming, as to use the phrase Collin used, the depictions of childhood. It's nostalgic. It was great. It worked. I love the aspect ratio that they used. Thought that was a little nice thing with the black bars. But every time it cut back to the present, there was this weird tonal shift where it became like there was the scene where they're in the burning building. Things are a lot more fast-paced. Things are a lot more action-oriented. And it just didn't gel very well with the better parts of the show and the majority of the show, which took place in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if you were able to excise that or make it more tonally consistent, at least, it would have fit a lot better. But as it stands, it's very, very jarring. Which, I mean, maybe you're going for that, but I did not end up enjoying it as an effect.
Okay.
but
Yeah, we
but how
like
about
I
the
said, this is.
NTR, guys.
Oh God, we're not gonna touch that.
We're moving on.
We're moving. We could literally discuss the show for hours. So, but we got other stuff we got to get to. So Collin.
Oh fuck.
So I swear this is the last time you're ever gonna hear this joke. But
Okay, all right.
why don't you say hi to Gensou no Grimgar for us?
Cool.
Colin allegedly made that joke.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. I'm pretty sure me and like 50 other guys thought of it immediately when we saw the title. But I was the first. I swear, I was the first guy to ever make that joke. And I was the first guy to say on the final episode, it's time to say bye to Gensou.
Well, tell us about it, Collin.
Sure thing. Now, I went on quite a bit about how much I liked this show.
Boy, did you.
Oh, yeah. In the mid-season podcast. And while I still definitely like the show, I feel that some of the stuff that I praised it for originally wasn't quite there in the second half. The animation, I praised it for the weight that it moved with, especially with the weapons and whatnot and during the fight scenes, and I thought they all looked really great. But besides episode 8, where, you know, the gobs are slain for good and they are no longer comfy.
Rip comfy gobs.
Yes, it's the weight's kind of gone, or at least the animation quality is definitely gone. In fact, this show literally ran out of money.
South
And you
Park.
can pinpoint the exact moment it happens too.
You guys
to the
like
point
South
where
Park?
they actually used sketches for the last fight, which apparently is going to be fixed for the Blu-ray. And
It looked like an animatic.
yes,
Wait.
they literally did it for free.
I must have missed that. Maybe
Uh,
I was like barely paying attention. But
yeah, thanks, Matt.
maybe
Uh,
I don't know. But you can also tell in the one scene where they're walking down like a path, and you see Yume in the background just kind of bouncing
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, but there's something about Yume that never lost its quality, and I'm not talking about her. I'm not talking about her look.
I was about to ask.
And that's the fact that they seem to put a surprising amount of emphasis on Yume having a wide range of facial expressions. And I talked about some of the emphasis on facial expressions in the mid-season podcast, but it seems like Yume gets most of the attention here, and that's probably why so many people like her, because she expresses far more than anyone else, and in fact, far more than a lot of anime characters. It's a weird small detail because it's faces in anime basically just like some circles and lines and dots. They're not particularly detailed.
Just say it's her ass, Collin, and move on.
Right. I still enjoy how small these characters feel in this world. Even Haruhiro, who figures out that he's got a special bullshit instant win move, figures out that this bullshit instant win move is common to all thieves. And I thought that was a good bit of world building to make sure that you understand that Haruhiro isn't special. I think that, obviously what I love about this show is that it's glacially paced. And that
it was.
It's not about some...
Yes, it certainly was.
Yeah, it's not about some high fantasy adventure. It's more about these people learning to survive in this world and Haruhiro learning to be a leader. Mm-hmm. That being said, I don't know what the hell it is with light novel adaptations and pacing, but they seem to all have pacing issues because you guys noted it in the thread. And I snapped back in text and defended it, but your point was valid in the fact that we were going from point A to point B, from resolving and going to where Minato died, and then immediately deciding to go to where Mary's friends died the next episode. May have been too quick, and I was thinking, man, we couldn't have sacrificed some of those time with the insert songs. Make sure
hey, listen,
a little bit.
Those are great.
Can we dedicate a special portion of this discussion to those fucking insert songs and how out of place they are?
No. I like the first two, and then the next two. I think there was another two. They felt like way too much, especially since we felt pressed for time towards the end, and they didn't need to be since we had like an extra 10 minutes that we could have used for different stuff.
Well,
okay.
I think I was the only one who liked the insert songs, and the one thing I'll say about them is that the style of music that they chose was very consistent. So it's not like it was all over the place. You knew what you were going to get every time.
I'm pretty sure it's just somebody's album, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
the whole show was like a big promotion for this random band.
And yeah, you do see that a lot in anime, but I guess it just comes down to whether you like that music or not. And I liked it, so it worked for me. But Funk obviously took bigger umbrage.
I took many umbrage. But the bigger issue is not the quality of the music. It's what Collin said. It's when you're taking so much time in several episodes to play montages that ultimately don't mean anything. Like if they were plot progressing montages, which sounds weird, but if the events in them actually mattered, then I wouldn't care.
Some of them were. Some of them were just like
the first. I feel like the first two were informative.
But I also felt like a lot of them did a good job at setting the tone and the mood of an episode.
Right.
But some of them could have been excised.
Yeah. If they had made them more relevant, or if they were able to structure the show and pace it a bit better, that they weren't pressed for time, then it also wouldn't have mattered. But it kind of everything was the perfect storm to make these inserts horrible. It made them as annoying as possible because you really wish they were doing something else with that screen time. I do agree that they serve the tone sometimes. When they're out shopping after they first get some money and they do it with an insert song, like that's fine. But most of the time, it's like I have to listen to shitty music while watching pictures I don't care about.
Slideshows,
yes. So it's just a poor decision, a poor creative decision to include them.
Can we get Matt to talk about the character of Minato? Because I know he really loved that character.
So I'm by far the person who disliked the show the most This was the show that this wasn't the worst show I saw this season. I mean, it wasn't even the second worst show I saw this season, but it was
the
certainly
third
show.
worst?
It may have been,
Oh,
but it was definitely the show that made me the angriest, just because of how much I felt like it was wasting my time. And one thing I hated was how much they just focused on fucking Minato, how much of a Jesus Christ figure they treat him as, despite the fact that he is complete shit. So
did it make you
He's-
even more
it-
happy when they like dwelled on his death like the rest of the season?
yes,
Like every
it's like-
fucking episode.
If he's so great, then why is he dead?
yes, exactly. Here's
No,
the
no, no.
thing.
So allow me to slap your shit here for a second, Matt.
Can I just? Okay, whatever. Fuck it.
Just let him finish first.
Okay.
No.
Yes.
I just want to make my point. So they really emphasize how great of a leader Minato is. But here's the thing. They are shit at the beginning, the whole way through, and don't get better until after Minato is dead. How is he a good leader if that nothing happens before
Look,
before he dies, and then suddenly they get better after that point?
It's like
That
they're
is-
not
okay,
really
this is
worshipping
not
Monato as much as they're worshipping the idea of Monato.
look, because see, I think you have grossly misinterpreted things here because that's how they feel. That's how Haruhiro feels originally upon Haruhiro's death, but they dedicate a whole internal monologue later on where Haruhiro basically accepts that Minato was really just a guy, probably had plenty of flaws, but he didn't really know him that well. He didn't have a lot of time to know him. And that Minato was probably no more qualified to be a leader than Haruhiro was. Of course, Haruhiro's more qualified later because he learns to grow into the role. But there's a certain point that, yeah, he still cares deeply and deeply regrets Minato's death. But I don't think he's quite the saint-like figure that he was previously, even though he does appear later on as Minato Wan.
Like, I get that. Like, I think I do realize that they did kind of do that at the end. It doesn't change the fact that it was still annoying as shit how Haruhiro basically wore, like, the only thing that could have made it worse if he wore like a "what would Minato do" bracelet on his arm. Like, that was essentially what he was doing. Especially like I did definitely groan when Minato got his Force Ghost, and they started talking like that. Even though I know it's not actually, I know it's not actually him. I know he's not actually there or anything. It's just Haru being, I don't know, fucking autistic.
It did feel like they resolved that plot point and then dwelled on it again.
It was just really annoying how much they dwell on him.
Yeah, I feel like they should not have brought the Minato ghost whatever back at the very end, because it feels like they had reconciled that.
Yeah, that was really
That
dumb.
did bother me towards the end. And we talk about how Ranta is the key to all of this.
Can we talk about how he's shit?
He's
No,
fucking annoying
he's
as
great.
hell.
Thank
oh
you.
no.
He's great because he's annoying as hell, because he's a little shit. And I talked about this in the mid-season podcast too. But I think Matt needs to air his grievances.
Okay.
For a
Well, I'll just, every single point in the show where they could have given Ranta like some good, I guess, I don't know, like where they could have redeemed, that's the word I'm thinking of, redeemed him, where they could have redeemed him as a character, they just ruined completely. Aside from the one moment where he was right, where they're passing by these sleeping like wolf things in the cave.
The kobolds, yeah.
Cobalt, whatever the fuck. And he's like, hey, let's kill these guys. And they're like, no, we can't kill them, even though we've, like, it's bad to kill them or whatever, despite the fact that they've been killing comfy gobs this whole time. Who are like, which, whatever. I guess they're not as important. I don't know. But
they're not fuzzy. So.
But, like, I will say, like, I really was shitting on the show in the previous podcast, the mid-season, and as it was going on, when Mary got introduced and we were getting more of her, I was actually enjoying it more. But the point of this, and I was going to raise my score a bit from what it was before, but then we get to the last episode where within one line, everybody, you guys know what I'm talking about, within one line, it just ruined everything. That was when Ranta, in a moment of fear and incredible danger, as he's all alone, he is thinking about Yume and her breasts, and exclaims, "I should have fondled her flat chest."
How does that ruin anything?
So
Because it's so stupid.
But that's like
So I'm going. Yeah, I'm
everything
going
that
to
was
say
set up before.
it's absolutely. I don't think it's stupid. I think that was one of the most humanizing moments for Ranta.
What?
One of the
So
dumbest things
I found
ever.
that so
Why is her chest? Why do they have to every single moment where he's where they have this banter about her supposedly having a flat chest was the dumbest thing I have ever
Ranta's
seen.
an idiot, and he can't do bants, so he only falls back on one single insult. But he obviously has a crush on the girl.
You're
and
right.
That's an expression of his feelings because he's an idiot and can't express anything.
But at the same time, the show even was self-aware when she remarks herself that she doesn't have a flat chest, and they still keep going with this joke. So I didn't have a problem with it to begin with. I just do feel they drag it out a bit too long.
It's not even a joke, though. I don't think that's supposed to be a source of
It's
laughter
not.
for
I
the
don't
audience.
think I
It's
think
not. I
Because
know.
I talked about
But-
this also on the
It's just so
mid-season when they
dumb.
first bring it up.
It felt like his character could have grown more if he had stopped, if he had just let that aspect go.
It just really was annoying to me.
No, I think if that line gets you, you've missed the point.
I understand what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be him, being, I don't know, immature or whatever, and, not knowing how to, I guess, express it. The method of doing it, and what they use as it just felt dumb. It just felt really juvenile. And
Like, they had a chance
He
to make
is
him...
juvenile.
But they had a chance to make him likable, and
Yeah,
they
but
didn't
I'm not
take it.
I feel like the writing is juvenile.
I think Ranta was very likable. I think at the end of the show, when he stays behind and he's scaffolding falls and he's forced to fight off the kobolds by himself. By the way, I don't know why Japan thinks kobolds are like werewolves, but whatever. And then there is the scene where Haruhiro entrusts the safety of the party to Ranta, and I think this is strangely glossed over, and I guess it's kind of easy to miss, but you have to understand that when Haruhiro kills date spots,
Great name.
Some people say that Ranta abandoned him, whereas Haruhiro came back for Ranta, but Haruhiro had to get in that bed somehow. So yes, Ranta did come back for Haruhiro afterwards. And I thought that showed growth between their relationship, because the whole time Haruhiro, and even the whole party, had been treating Ranta with a lot of contempt and like he was a liability.
For good reason.
And it's for a good reason, because he has a bad attitude. But Haruhiro also has to come to accept that Ranta is a part of the party and that he does have value and worth when they're down there in those mines. And I thought that was a nice moment, and I actually kind of wish they had more of their relationship explored a little bit more. Especially because I find it interesting, because Ranta actually has kind of become self-conscious about how much people hate him, but that just makes him act more like an asshole because he's such a dipshit. Even when he has a heart-to-heart with Ranta, he's still like a standoffish dipshit to him. And I just really like that aspect of his character. And in fact, something I like about the characters in general in this show and in the whole setting, is that the show doesn't really try hard to subvert my expectations about the world I'm seeing. So for example, like a show that's trying to subvert my expectations would be all like, oh, look at this character. He's this saint-like, just super nice guy. And then later it's like, oh my god, he's a triple-dicked rapist. And that's them subverting my expectations. Or it's like, oh my goodness, this fantasy world is just so amazing. And it's like it turns out it's just like gargoyles are just like birthing leopards and it's just eating everybody.
What tangent are you going on here?
I don't think I understand. Can I get one more example?
So really what you see is what you get with the show. It presents its world and it's harsh and unforgiving. And the character archetypes in the show, they're very familiar and they don't have that much depth to them, but they give these characters a surprising amount, because of the glacial pace of the show, they give these characters a surprising amount of breathing room, and letting them interact organically endears me to them, even if they're not the most deep iterations of these archetypes. And that's pretty much all I have to say about Grimgar. I enjoyed it. 7 out of 10.
Yeah, see, the thing is, I also gave it a 7 out of 10, but I didn't feel like I enjoyed it as much as you did, so it's a little weird, but... did anyone else have any major points they wanted to make about the show?
I just wanted to add if this show didn't have that video game shit, it would have been significantly better.
Yeah, I really wish there was a payoff for that.
Shit.
The only payoff was Haru, magically using Deus Ex Machina to kill the final boss.
I remarked on this when the episode initially aired, but I found it pretty ridiculous that they had we felt the need to contextualize critical hits episode.
Yeah.
Did not work for me.
And I guess I also didn't like how, Boob Mage and Magzo were like not even characters at all.
Yeah, they were a little forgettable. They could have done a lot more with them.
Boob Mage especially. Shihoru was a very flat character. Haha.
Hey.
Don't bully her. All right. Anyone else want to say anything before we move on?
Anything.
Thank you, Funk. Kenny.
What?
You're next up. You get to tell us how sweet you thought Dagashi Kashi was.
That is terrible, and I'm gonna go now. That is... God damn, Steve.
I'm not doing my job if I'm not segueing, Kenny, so...
You're the worst. I quit.
You mean Dagashi Kashi? That's his friend.
Well, tell us what it's about, Kenny.
What it's about. It's like some little, there's just like a little traditional Japanese candy shop, I guess is what you would call it. Like out in the boonies or whatever. And it's run by a father and son. Like their family's been running it for generations, I guess is what they say. But the main male character, Coconuts. Yes, Coconuts. That's how his name is pronounced. His father wants him to take over the shop, but he doesn't want to because he's like an aspiring manga artist. Anyway, there's this really hyper eccentric girl named Hitaru comes in and wants to recruit his father to come work for her dad's company. But in order for that to happen, Coconut's father wants him to take over the shop so he can run it. And then you get to learn all about traditional Japanese sweets from then on there.
Boy, do we.
Jesus.
So what did you think of the show, Kenny?
It had its moments, but most of the time I was just kind of just drifting off, thinking about other things, because it was just...
So you weren't thinking about candy?
It's a high recommendation.
For some reason, I would go eat some candy after I got done watching it, so I don't know.
It worked! It did its job! The Japanese candy advertising industry got to you.
Subliminal messaging right there. But, I don't know. There's really not much more to it. It's
Well, I have more to say.
Yeah, go ahead, Funk.
Of course you do.
I've been brimming with this. So I quite enjoyed the show, and at the same time I didn't. But I think, Kenny, you're wrong. Because this show is ultimately, it's not about candy at all. Every episode centers around candy. All the characters, all they talk about is candy. But really what the show about is nostalgia, and more importantly, Japanese nostalgia. Literally everything in the show is done with the purpose of making Japanese reminisce about their youths. So you have the candy, right? literally every candy is a popular existing brand that people likely would have eaten as kids. But beyond that, all the characters play specific games with the candy. Whether it's those gummy hands that they like kind of sling about, or the fortune telling stuff, or they play doctor with those candy that look like pills.
That was cute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are all things that people likely would have done in their youths and can relate to. And then they really kick it up a notch by having a festival episode. At one point, characters do stupid little handshakes that kids do. The characters in the show are all like late teenagers, I think. But,
Yeah, a very likable cast.
They're all in high school.
but they act like children. And the point of all this is that, as I don't think, well, this show is definitely not for us. I don't think you can get the most out of this show without being able to relate to all the things in there. Like, the show's not about learning about Japanese candy. It's about remembering Japanese candy that you used to have. So I felt bad trying to rate this show because I'm never, ever going to get the full impact of it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to like the show nearly as much as somebody watching it in Japan who grew up there. Now, putting that aside, the show did have issues that I can objectively comment on. Like Kenny said, it does get a bit boring at times. If that's a product of not being able to relate to the whatever they're talking about in the show, it is a bit failure on the writer's part to make that interesting to other people. You're never going to get the full effect of it, but it should still make for compelling television. Because otherwise, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
So I think the show was overall just kind of poorly written. Some of the characters were endearing. A lot of them were kind of bland. Like, I thought Coconuts, Endo, and Saya really didn't have much personality to them. And Hotaru really didn't either. But, she was best girl, so she's got that going for her. So I really wanted to like this show, but I could not. Just couldn't, really. I gave it a very middling score.
Yeah, I felt the same way. Like, the whole time I was fighting with the show, like, I really want to like it, but, like, look, I can tell you my biggest problem with it is that the show is extremely formulaic. Like pretty much every episode can be summarized as, every episode has 2 segments, and each one would start off with, like, 2 or 3 characters doing an activity. And then one of them, usually Hotaru, would be like, "This reminds me of a candy," and then they would incorporate the candy into the activity. Repeat ad nauseum for almost every episode of the show. There were a few exceptions, but like you knew what you were getting every single time, and the segments of the show were like very hit or miss. So like the show never had any consistency to it. So like the segments, maybe this was just me, but any segment that used the candy as like a metaphor for something sexual, I found those I found those extremely funny, but like a lot of the other ones just fell flat. And I don't say this about a lot of shows, but like I feel like this would have been better if it had been a short anime instead of a full-length series.
Yeah.
I think so too, yeah.
I could have taken one of those segments a week, but 2 of them was always pushing it.
It did kind of feel like some episodes were just too long for their own good. Like I would say probably the highest points were when the episodes actually had some semblance of a plot going on. Like the segment with the what was it? The festival episode had more of a plot to it and was actually interesting. The episode
It's a very character focused episode, which is why it worked.
Yeah, the episode with Hotaru dealing with the ulcer was also very good, I thought, because it was less about the candy and just more about silly things with her.
And that one had a good payoff at the end too.
Yeah,
like, I found that really funny.
That was funny, and also, of course, the segment with Coconuts and Saya as younger children playing doctor was also very cute. And like parts like that were good, but all the other parts were just kind of okay.
Yeah.
And I do feel like if this show was just like a 7-minute short, it would have been significantly more entertaining.
I thought that the last 2 episodes, they have a little Coconuts and Hotaru have like a quote deep conversation.
Yeah.
Are you talking about where they're sitting at the train stop?
Yeah, and then
Oh, yeah.
later on when they're at the bus stop, neither of those felt like compelling character moments to me because neither of them had any real development over the series.
Yeah,
So
it was
it's
weird.
just a lot of nothing that tries to culminate into something, and then it just fails.
It felt like they were trying to like really make it feel like a conclusion, despite the fact there is no build up to the conclusion.
It's just there.
The problem is that, and I know you can say this about a lot of, literally any episodic show, but so you could take the episodes and put them in any order, and it would be the same show.
Yeah.
If that's the case, don't try to sell me on the end of someone's arc, because there's clearly no arc there. It felt a little insulting that that's how they decided to end it. Not insulting enough because it's such a meaningless show, but yeah, it just did not work for me.
Yeah, bit of a missed opportunity with this show.
Yeah,
because I wouldn't really want to like it.
Yeah, I think the show with some changes could have been really good.
Yeah,
but then again, what show couldn't be? If you change a few things.
I think we can all agree though. Hotaru has a 10 out of 10 character design.
Gee,
I like that
why.
they kept giving her and Saya different outfits.
Oh yeah, that was nice.
That's why people came back.
And
How nice was it,
hair.
Matt?
It's like
as
the
well.
Weekenders. How they have changing outfits every episode. The one cartoon that did that.
Yes, and they also have recurring outfits because they don't just throw out their clothes when they're done wearing them.
Naturally,
It's like
crazy.
it's the technology we have. But we can all agree, I think, that this show has the best eyes
Oh yes, definitely.
of any anime.
Yeah, I like that they're all unique.
Yeah. They're not just bland anime eyes. They're like strung out, get this man some fucking coffee eyes.
Okay, anyone else want to add anything to Dagashi Kashi? Other than I keep saying it wrong? No? Okay. Well,
We're all just
in
so
that case,
passionate.
yes, in that case, we're gonna take a quick break and we'll be right back with more of the Luckycast. And welcome back to the Luckycast. Next up is a show that everyone on this podcast seemingly had a complete consensus opinion on. I'm fairly certain everyone here gave this show an 8 on Mal, which I don't think has ever happened before. But I'm going to call on Matt to start us off and tell us why Konosuba was so great.
Oh boy. So Konosuba was probably one of the biggest surprises of the season because first off, it's a Studio Dean show. And if you don't know who Dean is kind of infamous for making a lot of shit.
Very, very bad adaptations.
Very bad adaptations with poor animation. And this show, nobody was really expecting this show to be as good as it ended up being. And it is a absolute gem. So just to kind of explain it, this show is a... It seems like another like stuck in an RPG fantasy world type of show, but like how it starts off is this guy named Kazuma. He's like this NEET who plays games all night and all that shit. He ends up dying in a rather comical way, and he goes to the afterlives and meets this goddess named Aqua, who is like, hey, you can go to heaven, but heaven's boring as shit, so if you want, we can also send you to this fantasy world where you can, be like this superhero and fight and try to defeat this evil guy that we've been trying to beat. And once you beat him, you'll go to heaven again. And he's like, all right, I'll do that. And she's like, well, you get to bring one thing with you. And he decides to choose her to bring with him. So they're both stuck in this world. And it's a lot of, and of course, silly things ensue because Aqua is pretty much a retard.
I mean, that's canonically true.
You can
Yeah.
you can drop the pretty much.
Yeah, 'cause she actually had, despite the fact that she is like a high mage or something like that in this world, she has incredibly low intelligence, and she's basically just really dumb. And they also meet Megumin, who is by far the best character of the show and probably one of the best characters of the whole season.
Go fuck yourself, Matt.
Why would you take issue with that?
I'm just kidding.
Oh God,
Okay.
God,
I'm not
God damn it,
serious.
Kenny.
So the whole thing with Megumin is she is a super chuny mage, which I don't know, who she only has one spell, which is explosion. She is very much a fanatic of explosions. And the thing is, though, despite her enthusiasm for explosions and explosion magic, she is actually unable to properly use explosion, because whenever she uses her explosion move, she just basically falls over, exhausted, unable to do anything. And she can only use it once a day. So she's pretty much useless as well. And then they also meet Darkness, who is a knight who seems like she's competent, but in reality she's actually a complete masochist who is unable to hit anything, has terrible accuracy, but just loves pain.
Boy, does she love getting hit.
She is a tank, a canonical tank, and the whole show just follows them and how shit their team is. And I guess one of the first things I have to say that I really love about this show is that, despite the fact that like you might think it's a harem, it's not at all, because Kazuma has no interest in any of these girls whatsoever.
For good reason.
There are actually
They're
multiple
all
points.
Fucking psycho.
There are multiple points where he wishes he was in another party, and just the fact that he is the most competent one of them all, despite the fact that he is the MC, is a lot different as well. And another aspect of the show is the voice acting, which is one of its strongest
God.
parts, because
It's on point.
it is completely on point. There are multiple parts in which they where there's like ad-libbed scenes, ad-libbed moments. One of the best being whenever one of them like says Kazuma or something like that, and he's like, "Yes, I'm Kazuma."
Got me
You're
every
talking
time.
Are you talking about like when Akko's being chased by the Dullahan undead army and she's like screaming at the top of her lungs?
It happens a number of times.
Because her scream is fucking hilarious.
It
when
is.
that happened.
It
And
is.
she would always scream for his name every time, and he's just like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, well, part of what makes him so charming as a character is that he is a real piece of shit. In fact, part of what makes like so much of the humor work, and they're able to get away with so much, is how unsympathetic all the characters are.
Yeah.
And so you can basically just dole out as much abuse towards them as you'd like, because it's almost all deserved.
It's basically Seinfeld.
Oh my god, it is. This
See,
is
Seinfeld.
Seinfeld the anime.
That would be Lucky Star.
Yeah, this is Seinfeld in a fantasy setting.
Yeah.
But it works.
Yeah.
Which is really the only thing Seinfeld needed to get better, was the
Now
fantasy
I
setting.
just want to see the Seinfeld characters get stuck in a fantasy world and seeing how they deal with it.
That'd be good. And I think the thing that works great for the show is just a wonderful parody of this whole genre, which is like at this point extremely tired.
Mhm.
Because going into the show, I didn't expect it to go this hard into the humor. But it's really like one of the only ways you can get into this genre now without people just writing it off, because it's been done to death.
And they kind of hit it out of the park, because apparently this was a big success, despite
Yes.
looking like total shit and having a nobody director.
Yeah.
This was actually, I believe, one of, if not the best-selling show of the season.
Yes.
It's up there. And go ahead, Funk.
I was going to say, when season 1 ends with a title card saying season 2 in production, that it was an unexpected success.
Yeah, especially because they only gave it 10 episodes.
Well, yeah, this was probably made on like the budget you can buy shoes with.
Would you say a shoestring budget?
Yeah, it's frustrating because that's really the only major complaint I have with the show is just how bad it looks, and it is very distracting at times. Like, people's faces are melting in almost every scene.
Almost.
That's par for the course though with Studio D.
At times, but you know, they can do good work if they put time and money into it. But this wasn't the case. But they did put a lot of love into this. They took this adaptation and ran with it. And there are some problems where they leave out like an important story about the character of Whis, which makes her introduction very confusing. But you know, by and large, it works.
You know, it goes to show that, you know, with a good script and decent writing, like, even a show that doesn't look that great can be infinitely more enjoyable than one that looks good and doesn't have that much substance.
Phantom World.
Frank, keep it in your pants.
We'll get to that.
And that is towards Funk.
Yes.
Funk was not won over by this show on episode 1. It wasn't until weeks later that he watched episode 2.
Right.
And the moment this show really piqued my interest was when Aqua started laughing at him because he pissed his pants when he died. And everyone, because he died, but he didn't die saving anyone. He died from a heart attack. And from that specific point, you already knew that this was a parody. And then it got even better because they kind of set up Aqua as like this domineering bitch type. And then immediately she's taken down a peg by Kazuma. And as he's being transported to the other world, when he picks her as the one thing he can take, he's just being lifted. He's giving this maniacal laugh. And she's just screaming for her life.
I'll tell you the moment that won me over is it's also in the first episode. Is like they're about to set off on the quest, and it just cuts to this montage of them just like painting buildings for a living and drinking with the guys and throwing up in an alley.
I appreciated how her puke was rainbow.
Puking rainbows. It was great. Like that set the tone perfectly as well.
What's even better is that like, oh sorry, Funk.
Well, I was gonna. So obviously, I dropped it on episode 1 before coming back to it based off your guys' recommendation, and I finished it. And as Steve said, we all gave it an 8, so I liked it. The reason that I dropped it was that this show aired late into the season, relatively, like 2 weeks in, I believe, or maybe 1 week in, but after everything else. And by that point, I was watching so many things. And when I saw it, I did just kind of write it off on the premise. It's like, oh, another trapped in a fantasy world anime. Mm-hmm. It's not that I didn't enjoy the first episode, I just didn't think it would go anywhere such that it would be worth my time. And obviously I was wrong, and I'm very happy that I went back to watch it. But I don't mean to imply that I thought the first episode was bad.
Yeah.
I didn't.
No, that's actually completely understandable.
All right, I understand.
I think it was the latest season, the latest show to start the season, but also the first to end.
Yeah,
which says a lot. No, that's not true.
Oh, actually, yeah. I do.
Yeah, that Tabi Machi Late show had 4 episodes.
Well, I mean,
and she and her cat started airing after.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Again,
but that was also 4 episodes.
Another 4-episode show that aired entirely in March.
Yes. So let's talk about that then, because fuck this show. No.
Does anybody want to add anything else?
I loved when they shat on Kirito.
When did that? I must have missed it.
Wait, what's his name? That's the guy's name from Sword Art, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, you're talking about, like, his rival.
Yes.
That guy.
Yeah, I guess just that archetype, but yeah.
That was pretty great. And also the fact that there are people apparently...
Yeah, there were actually people upset about that they, like, made fun of, like, self-insert characters.
That's wonderful.
You'd be surprised of how many, like, threads I see that's like, can someone recommend me a show with a character who's overpowered? It's like, people are really into that.
Where's the fun in that? There's no conflict.
Yeah, it's like there are shows that can do it, but it requires a really...
I don't want to throw this term around because the worst kind of people use it. But some people really do enjoy power fantasies.
Oh boy.
That's true.
That's what those characters are.
But there are ways you can do it well, and most shows don't do it well.
This is
Yeah.
coming from a man who gave Sword Art a 9.
Yes, but I think Sword Art does it good. But we're not talking about Sword Art.
Okay, cool.
So talk about Konosuba, or else we're moving on.
I think that's
Alright,
indicative of your
I'm-
taste in general.
I'm
but,
Konafruba with Konosuba. So.
It was just a really fun
Kyle.
and concise show. Like,
Oh, I do want to compliment one element of the show that is pretty innocuous, but I really enjoyed the bumpers in the show. I thought they were reused sometimes, and obviously there's not going to be too much variation. But I did derive a good amount of enjoyment from them.
there was one episode where all the bumpers were Pokemon inspired.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you caught that, but yeah,
I
didn't.
remember that. I know there was one where like one of them comes out of a ball or something like that,
yeah.
and it's pretty obvious. But
I
yeah.
liked in the first episode they had the pause gimmick in like at the mid break between the episode.
I thought
Yeah.
that was gonna be the eye catch for every
That
episode.
would have been so great if it was. Like,
No, I rolled my eyes at that. I was
I
like,
think that
Yeah.
I don't think that would have worked for the whole show. That was
No.
good for one gag.
well,
but-
I mean, I thought it would have been nice if they had made a way to make it work. Like, you know, it worked very well with the comedic timing in the first episode because, you know, it's while she's like crying and screaming and shit. But
it's just very abrupt.
You like seeing her in pain.
Well, with that comment,
With that comment, speaking of being in pain, Funk, you have the dubious honor of introducing HaruChika.
I'll do break time.
Okay, so we were kind of talking about Erased and how it kind of set up mystery elements, and there was some debate on whether or not it delivered on them. HaruChika is very much the same way. The first episode begins, well, not begins, but it features a fugue-based mystery, which had me hooked immediately. I was like, this is great. This is all I could ever want in a show. I want to see how this turns out. And it ended up being kind of stupid. Like the person who solved the mystery was also the one who put it into motion. So I just seemed kind of dumb. But I was like, whatever. That was an interesting idea. I'll allow it and see where they go. And then with every successive episode, things just got more and more stupid. Every episode has a little self-contained mystery. The crux of the show is that a school music group is going around solving mysteries, and that's what you sign up for. It's shitty Japanese Scooby-Doo with a gay potential romance. But the problem was that every mystery was so convoluted. You listen to them, first of all, you're never going to figure it out beforehand. They don't give you the tools to do that, but you listen to them explain the solution, whatever the result was, how they came about in their thought processes, and it never makes any sense at all. And I'm not saying that to be cute or anything, to be overly dismissive. It literally does not make sense. You just have to scratch your head and replay the scene, and you're going through the dialogue, and it's like, but what? But how?
Wait, you're replaying the scenes?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to figure, like, when he's explaining it and I don't get it, I go back just to see if I missed something, but I
You
don't.
cared way too much, Fun.
It just didn't make any sense. And it's just, because it's the same character always solving the mysteries. Haruta, is that his name?
Haruta, yeah.
Yeah. And you just grow to hate him, because you're like, how are you thinking like this? What is wrong with you?
He's just
It's-
a walking encyclopedia.
Yeah.
He just knows everything, apparently.
The knowledge that he has is just so random. Like, he knows about paintings from the 1940s, and then he'll know about, like, computer programming, and then the fine aspects of Rubik's Cubes, or how radio broadcasting works. And these strange tangential elements are what they what they base the mysteries on. And it's just never satisfying because it's such an ass pull. If you're going to hide the solution from the audience, that's fine, but you need them to have an aha moment as it's being explained. Otherwise, it's just going to be a feel-bad. No one wants something explained to them that they don't understand. That's just intrinsically bad feeling. It's such a poor decision that I really, really question the writers and why they're in this business or what they're doing. I know this is based off of something, so I'm not...
It's
You
based
can't-
off of a novel.
Yeah, I don't know how literally it was adapted. Like, if these are the exact mysteries and endings to those mysteries from there. But it made for really extremely unengaging television. And if you're like me and like Matt, you look at this and you're like, okay, but I am interested in the school band portion of it. I liked other shows with similar settings. Yeah, I like music. Yeah, Euphonium. So, and this is coming right off the heels of Euphonium. So you're like, okay, there's got to be something there, right? Well, for the first half of the show, there's just almost completely devoid of music, of performances, or of anything that would scratch that kind of itch. So it's almost adding insult to injury. I would talk to Matt frequently after these episodes, and we'd be like, when are they going to get to the music? And it just never happened. It's
the funny thing is...
Yeah?
Okay.
Well, because I think I know what you're going to say. I should explain that I dropped the show probably 6 episodes into it. Seven episodes. So you were saying that?
They actually do get to music in, I forget which episode. I think it was like episode 11, where there's actually like a little contest between these two characters. One is playing piano and the other is playing this weird like handheld piano thing that you blow into. I forget what that's called. But
oh yeah,
That's a melodica.
Yep.
Yeah, something like that. And they have a little contest like that, and there's some music there. And it's like, oh hey, actual music is being played. And there's some episode, I think there's another one where they're like practicing on the roofs, and there's a little bit of music, but it's not anything significant. And the ending though, they do have a big portion where they play a whole song. The problem is that it is a blatant ripoff of Euphonium's ending, because it's the same kind of deal. They're at the contest. It's the big day. They've all been practicing apparently behind the scenes, stuff we didn't see.
Right.
Because, who cares about what's actually happening? Who cares about how good they're actually getting?
They gotta go to regionals.
And that's the problem, right? Like, the reason Euphonium's ending worked is because every conflict in the series basically led up to that.
Yeah.
You got to see the inner struggle of the band, the club, school band coming together, certain characters practicing, trying to get better, failing, everything about that show.
Mm-hmm.
But in this, you only ever see the characters solve mysteries. So the culmination of all the mystery solving is a performance that had nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
so
and
it fails as a climax.
And it's just really dumb as well, because like you see this, like you listen to this performance, and here's the thing: like when I was listening to it, like when I in Euphonium, when you hear that final performance, it's great. It gives you a really great feeling, because it's like, oh my god, they're so good now compared to the beginning, and it's like actually very heartwarming hearing them play, especially when they get to like trumpet solo. In this, you're hearing them like what happens is they start playing the song. It's like at the 15-minute mark in the show. The song covers, I think it's like 3 minutes or so, and they actually play the credits over the song, and with like these random scenes of previous stuff, like going through all that they've like all the mysteries or whatever, I guess, as a song, and it's just the song playing. There's nothing else, no dialogue or anything like that, and I'm listening, and it's just like, I really don't care.
Yeah.
I really don't care about like what's happening right now.
And if you're like me and you scroll down to like look to see how much time is left, you're like, oh god.
Oh yeah, I was like, wait a minute, what's gonna be the rest of the episode? And it turns out the rest of the episode is them being like, well shit, we got like bronze. Which I actually did like, because at least they didn't do an ass pull where they just randomly got the gold or whatever.
If they would have, I would have shut it off.
That would have been really dumb. But no, it turned out they were still shit, which I actually kind of liked. But still, it was such a blatant like ripoff of Euphonium. I highly doubt that was actually in the novels, because it just felt so similar to Euphonium, and it's pretty obvious that this show came out because they were trying to. I feel like they were kind of trying to
capitalize on that success.
Capitalize on their success. Yeah. Ride their coattail. I cannot talk. Coattails. But but yeah. Wait, what?
Let me ask you a question, Matt. I'm going to turn this to Kenny, and I'll answer myself. What was to you the stupidest moment in HaruChika?
Pretty much everything.
Well, you have to pick one, Kenny.
One?
What?
Okay.
the stupidest moment, them like doing that final concert. Like, I'm
Okay.
like, you spend all this time watching it, and like, oh yeah, well, I think I should be invested since they're like doing their, big like, debut, trying to like, win, go to like what nationals or whatever. It's just like what Matt said, you don't give a shit because it never shows them like trying to like practice and get better. They're just solving mysteries, like Japanese Scooby Doo, as you put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your stupidest moment, Matt?
When they were at this wasn't like the big concert at the end. This was at a previous concert that would eventually lead to that. But it was when they were all like kind of at this place ready to go. They had they were waiting for Sensei to come in and practice before the concert. And so Haruta isn't there, and so despite the fact that they have a very important thing that's about to happen, Haruta and Chika decide to go and solve this mystery about whose dog is this. There's a dog that's missing, and a little girl and some older guy come up and they're like, it's my dog, and this dog is really expensive. So they're like, well, one of them is probably trying to get the dog to sell it because they want the money. And it's like,
God.
It's like, there's a concert happening in an hour, guys. Why is this important? Take it to the police.
The dog.
Did they offer to cut the dog in half, and whoever objected,
they did not.
Their dog?
No, they did not do that. That would have I would not. This show is not below doing something like that because it really liked to reference things like that in failed attempts to try to be smart.
Of course, it would then also explain the reference. It's like, why did you offer to cut their dog in half? Well, you see,
yeah,
it's so dumb.
But it's just the way, I forget exactly how it is, but like the way that like how they figure out whose dog it is also really stupid. Like the other thing is like it's a little girl who is like who is one of the people, and it's like, okay, who do you really fucking think's dog this is? The little poor little girl who is like on the verge of tears, or this older guy who looks all smug and is very clearly just an asshole who wants to sell it?
Did they subvert your expectations?
No, it was the little girls.
Okay.
And it's just stupid. And and that's the other thing. Like, Sensei will always just come in and sometimes solve the mystery for them. Like, he just literally comes out of nowhere. Like, this happens in this episode, and it happens in previous episodes as well. And it's just so stupid. It's a really dumb show.
So,
like, it's kind of... There is actually another show very similar to this that's called Hyoka. If you want to watch a good version of, anime Scooby-Doo with mundane mysteries, watch that, because it does it a million times better.
So, my stupidest moment from the show was when they're investigating this house because it's apparently haunted, and then they go outside, remove like a brick or something, and then thousands of 500 yen coins fall out onto the ground. Because the previous occupant of the house every day would just shove 500 yen coins into a slot in his wall.
In hopes that, I guess, he turned his house into a giant piggy bank.
Yes.
For his nephew or whatever.
That does sound stupid.
But neglected to tell anybody this.
Yeah, it's like, it's so fucking... And, like, he's, like... Apparently because he was a prankster, which they show with him, like, very rudely treating a guest to a pie to the face. A literal pie to the face. In, like, some of the little, like, scenes of him. One of them also involves him, like, sending his guests into, like, a pond or something. It's, just a prank, bro.
So, the one interesting part of the show I found, and they completely failed to capitalize on this, was the little love triangle between Chika, Haruta, and Sensei. And
it doesn't matter in the end at all.
It doesn't, but it was initially interesting because whoever hasn't watched the show, Haruta and Sensei are both men, and then Chika's a woman. And Chika and Haruta are like old friends. There's like a little bit of a dynamic there that I hadn't seen before in anime. Maybe in hentai, but not in anime. But it just doesn't go anywhere. They set it up in the first episode and then throughout my duration with the show, it is never brought up again. And then from what Matt says, it does not matter in the end either.
No,
So-
there's literally no reason to be there. All it is for like random little comedy moments that aren't funny.
Nobody wins the Sensei Bowl.
So
No.
you're saying you wouldn't recommend this anime?
I would not recommend this anime. It was by far the worst show I watched this season.
It's
Well, at
very
least
bad.
the worst show I finished this season.
So did you get it all out that you wanted to get out?
Yes.
Anything else you wanted to add, Funk or Kenny?
No,
There's
that
nothing more to be said.
that
This piece
about
of shit.
sums it up. It's
Great.
horrible.
Shit, fam.
Okay, so next up, I'm gonna gush about Galko-chan. So just sit there, enjoy.
Tell everybody how many paragraphs you wrote about Galko.
I wrote like 5 paragraphs of notes on this fucking Galko-chan.
Oh my god.
Because like this show was actually the one I looked forward to watching the most every week. Like it wasn't the best show of the season, but it was the one I looked forward to the most.
Was it because of her Galkos?
It's up there. But okay, so let's talk about what this show's about. So Oshiete Galko-chan, or as everyone got in the habit of calling it, oh shit, it's Galko-chan. This is a next generation slice of life comedy, featuring cute girls talking about gross things. That's basically the premise. But like, there's 4 things in particular that I really want to talk about that this anime does extremely well. So number 1, as kind of mentioned before, like this show does a great job at taking subjects that other anime like this would never touch, and they put a very funny and enjoyable spin on it. And it gives this show its own legs to stand on, whereas a lot of other short anime like tend to come and go every season. This one really stands out. Number 2, for a show that's like made up entirely of gag characters, I think it does a decent job of giving some of them like a bit of depth, like not a ton or anything, but like more than you would expect for a show like this. So for example, like the bit where Otako teases Galko about her inverted nipples and how she'll never be a good mother. Like they actually showed Otako being genuinely upset at having like hurt her friend's feelings, which was a nice touch. Or the scene at the pool, where Galko stands up for the NTR kid who's being bullied.
Kid.
He's being bullied by flat chest and shark teeth. They're just little things, but like they help to really endear these characters to you.
And
Like
also,
they feel a bit more than just gag characters.
I was also just gonna mention the final episode where you see a little bit of where you see Galko's and Otako's first meeting.
Yeah,
And
I'm
how
gonna talk about that in a second.
Yeah. Okay.
So number 3, the show pays a surprising amount of attention to detail when it comes to continuity.
The lore.
It's mostly just little things that carry over from one episode to the next, but sometimes it'll even recontextualize a previous gag. And like the best example of this, someone notices a pubic hair on Galko's shirt, and she covers it up by saying it's a slightly less embarrassing armpit hair. But you find out in the next episode that Galko's sister has actually been stealing her school uniform to have fetish sex with her boyfriend, and you're like, oh shit, that gag kind of takes on an entirely new form. It's stuff that this kind of anime doesn't normally do, but like it adds a little bit extra layer to it that other shows just would never bother with.
See, that's nice because like it's still episodic and that you can still pretty much just watch it in every order. But once you get the context for it, it just becomes a little bit more entertaining. So
Exactly.
it's cool.
Well,
Yeah, and
real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
You can't watch it in any order, Frank. Specifically because one of the things I really enjoyed about the show is that the intro, every intro gives a little spiel about the
Right.
main characters, but it's different every time, referencing the events of the previous episode.
I guess
right?
that's true.
Yeah. So it's such a small thing, but you would lose that if you watched it in any order. So it does pay attention to those kind of details that Steve mentioned. Other short shows just never really care about.
Yeah, they don't go the extra mile. And the last one, like given that this is basically like a short gag comedy anime, like you wouldn't normally expect it to have some sort of message to it. But Galko-chan has a message to it. It's not a world-shattering or like entirely original message. Just the idea that you shouldn't judge others on their appearance.
But I like that it was there because like it especially because they put it they really help to like underscore the whole thing at the end because that's when they really drive it home. Where as being talked about before, like Galko and Otoko, how they met. It just felt like a nice bow to wrap on this like very funny and kind of original anime.
It was cute. It was
really cute. Those are my notes, by the way, so if you guys want to chime in.
That was 5 paragraphs?
It was.
I'm curious what you call a paragraph. But I want to just quickly comment on the OP and how during the first half of the season it just kind of went off the rails. Like, every episode, the OP seemingly got longer and included more sections. And I thought I was going a bit crazy. You just think like, wait, this isn't how it was, but I guess it is. And then the next week, it's like, wait, this was here too? And it's more unsettling than it should be.
They do tone it down.
Yeah, towards the back 9 of the show, they establish a consistent length for the intro, and they cut out my favorite vocal bit, which is this off-key talking that they have that's oddly pleasant.
They actually just released the full-length version of the opening the other day.
Oh,
I listened to it. It's pretty good. Kenny,
Yes.
what did you think of Galko?
Boobs.
My man.
There you go.
Represent.
I didn't know we were talking about Phantom World here.
Hey.
Frank, hold on. We're almost there.
So, who's the best Galko?
Galko.
Yeah,
Galko.
Otoko.
Otoko. It's definitely Otoko.
See, but Galko is so pure. I thought you would like her.
I mean, she certainly is pure, but she'll never be a good mother.
You just like it because she looks like Shizun.
I will say,
My first love, Shazun.
Go ahead, Matt.
well, I was just gonna say like Galko is a close second. Also, I will say I was very surprised by how much I ended up enjoying the show.
I think we all were.
I was surprised
Because-
at how invested I was in the characters.
Yeah, because like this show, I guess one thing I will say, like before I get into that, I love the character design for this show. Every character looks very unique and has their own they all have a very interesting look to them. There's like that test apparently. What is it called? The groaning, whatever it's called.
Matt Greening?
Yeah.
That test shows, yeah, the silhouettes. This show definitely passes that test because every character is just very unique in their personalities and their looks, and it's also just such a very, very colorful and pleasant looking show as well. All like the little backgrounds and stuff that they use for whatever moments are very well done and cute looking.
Yes. The color palette serves a purpose that another kind of garish color palette that was in this season doesn't quite. That Frank is about to talk about.
Is that the seg into?
No,
not necessarily. No,
that's,
no.
That's coming later.
It doesn't.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that's actually the next show up, so unless you guys have anything more to say about Galko.
I just want to reiterate, she will never, ever be a good mother.
I just want to, Steve, just
Kenny.
explain to me how that fatty character is like the most athletic out of all of them.
She's got muscle! It's
No.
all muscle!
It's all fat.
She is Sonic Meat.
She is Sonic Meat.
Sonic.
Oh, I did ask my friend if this was an accurate depiction of girl talk.
She got back to you?
Sort of. And she said, yeah, kind of. So,
Because I think that was the first thing we all took away from it. Yeah, just fantastic little show. I cannot recommend it enough.
What did you rate it out of 10?
I gave it a 9.
Oh, I thought you were going
like,
to give it a 10.
God.
This is the first short anime I've ever given higher than like a 7.
Oh my god.
Because Funk, we've talked about this before. I'm not like you really
We
love
have.
short anime, and I'm not a huge fan of them. But there have been some good ones recently, but I think this one's the cream of the crop.
All right.
And now we come to something very special.
Oh boy.
Okay, so Active Raid, anime of the season.
I mean, if you want to talk about Active Raid, we can do this.
We're not talking about Active
We're not
Raid.
talking about that.
So next up on the docket, we're going to be hearing the case of the People versus Myriad Colors Phantom World.
All right, I'm gonna go so I don't have to listen to the
Oh no, you have to stay. Mr. Oswald here will be acting as the prosecutor in this case.
Please don't.
I will
My God,
I will be
stop
serving
it.
as the defense, and the rest of you will play the witnesses. So, Mr. Prosecutor, if you'd like, please give us your opening statement.
Good people of the jury, if I may address this horrendous show, this slight upon the good Kyoto Animation name. Okay, I wouldn't quite go that far because Kyoto Animation has been pretty hit and miss recently, but Fan World is objectively the most boring thing that I've seen this season, and I didn't watch a lot in the winter anime season, but Phantom World is arguably the least substance of anything that I've seen and actually had the patience to sit through. The only reason why I was sitting through it was just so I can have things to talk about it with you guys. So, where do we begin with Phantom World? We can say the only redeeming thing about it that I found was the animation, and even that didn't quite cut it compared to some of Kyoto Animation's other works. Some of the, I guess I can say the oh fuck, I have no
blowing
idea.
it.
No, I'm
Blowing
sorry.
it.
I'm sorry. I knew that this was going to be a trial setting.
Somebody
and
play
my-
Cornered from Phoenix Wright.
No, my evidence is all over the place. Excuse me. So the first episode had some very interesting, like, visual gags. Like, not really gags, but everything was all pixelated and cool. There was this cute little fourth wall break that they had where Ruru like opens up Haruhiro. I was like, is it Haruhiro or Haruhiko?
Haruhiko.
Too many fucking Haruhiro, Haruhiko shits this season.
Haruhiko.
Okay.
Haruka.
Yeah. So, fully cool. So, yeah, so, you know, it's neat because you have all of this interesting stuff that's going on with that, and then stuff like that is never brought into play ever again. The whole thing more or less revolves around, you know, it begins, it's very formulaic. We have Haru going over some random ridiculous factoid, right, that he just kind of pulls out of his ass. That may have some kind of greater purpose in the episode, it may not, depending on the episode, right? It's very hit and miss, but most of the time it just comes off as just this off-the-wall, ridiculous thing that they try to make it go in, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And for the most part, it starts off, we have the first, what is it, 6 episodes are all character episodes, basically, that don't tell us very much about the characters, and they don't get us very invested in them. And then the latter half is just these characters getting into ridiculous situations that I don't quite care about because I'm not really invested in the characters, because the character episodes only do the bare minimum at getting me invested in the characters. No one is very interesting or likable. The stakes are very low and annoying. The action scenes don't do very much for me, despite being pretty. And there's just nothing of substance here.
Nothing but trash here.
You know what? But it's never to the point where it's egregiously bad, though. It's always just doing the bare minimum to skirt by and nothing more.
So is
Like-
that why you didn't drop it?
Well, I didn't drop it because I liked complaining about it with you guys every Wednesday. So
Highlight of the
there
week.
was that. Yeah, that wasn't the highlight of the week. I had Konosuba to watch right after it. So, like, you know, I had Fan World to, you know, get me ready for the anime season. And then, or the anime day, I should say. And,
Day.
yeah, right. And Konosuba to kind of cleanse the palate after that. So, that was nice. But then Konosuba ended early and I was just stuck with Phantom World. So,
Oh no.
So you grew more cantankerous as a result.
naturally. And the latter 2 episodes tried their best to sort of insert a little bit of a plot in there, but it wasn't enough to, like, redeem anything for me.
So, I want to take a little umbrage real quick with
Quit
Frank.
using that fucking word.
All right, whoa.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Objection! You're out of order, Funk.
Oh no.
The fans has to make their opening statement first.
Have you never been in a courtroom?
This whole court's out of order.
Okay, hold on to that umbrage, Funk.
All right, I'll retain my
so-
umbrage.
I call the witness of the stand. So okay, so you go, and then
Okay, so, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, to me, Myriad Colors Phantom World served as a very pleasant surprise. Not only was it the first KyoAni show in years that I've really enjoyed, but it also filled like a need I didn't know I really wanted.
KyoAni boobs. Yeah, all right.
You're out of order!
Objection.
You can't object to an opening statement!
Whatever.
Okay, and that was for an episodic anime that was an A gag comedy, or B, a slice of life show. And I do enjoy both of those things, but the fact that this show was neither of them really helped it to set it apart from a lot of anime these days, because you don't see a lot of shows like this. It feels like almost everything these days that's not one of those two things has some sort of narrative, and to be honest, that's what like I initially expected of the show. Like I thought after we got through with all those character introduction episodes, which I did thoroughly enjoy, by the way, but I thought this show would then like transition into a story, and by the times like episodes 6 and 7 roll around, like it became apparent that wasn't going to be the case, and I was actually initially disappointed with that. But then we hit the infamous Hot Springs / monkey rape episode,
Oh my God.
and that was without a doubt one of the most enjoyable episodes of a show I watched this season.
So wrong.
It was fucking hilarious,
It really wasn't.
and at that point I was like, okay, I get it. Like I get what the show is going for, and I'm on board.
It's just stupid.
But okay, but listen, I will say, like, not all the episodes were winners. Like, obviously, like
the
I thought.
fucking Schrodinger's cat episode was like one of the worst things I ever had.
Frank,
to
you're a bad prosecutor.
Objections.
Okay, well, I want to say I thought the cat episode and the play episode were particularly boring.
Whoa,
but I
you
do
didn't like the play episode?
No, I do not like It's a Play episode
Whoa,
episodes.
That was
But-
a good episode too.
But I will say the show had far more winners than losers, like in terms of its episodes, and I think it was supported by a really strong and likable cast of characters. Like I can name all the characters in the main cast off by heart, which isn't something I can do for anime that are like a lot better than this one that I like. So I thought this show did like an excellent job of endearing those characters to me, like even ones like I didn't think I would care for,
Can you
like
name
Koito.
any of their motivations right now?
It's not a show about motivations,
but
Frank.
Okay, name.
Let me finish.
Name 3 of Mai's character traits right now.
Let me
Boobs
finish.
do not count.
She's a tomboy. She's I don't know.
She was a bitch as a kid.
She was a bully, and she never realized it.
Thank you, Matt. I do want to say that this show had the funniest scene of any anime from this season, and I recognize this isn't going to apply to everyone.
my
Oh,
God.
baby.
But
Oh, do you know that Osomatsu and Konosuba were in this season?
I do. And this scene made me laugh so hard, I had to pause the episode and recollect myself, because that's how much in tears I was from laughing. And I know it's stupid, but it's the episode where Ruru becomes human,
Oh.
and she gets up from her desk and just walks out the window. I lost my shit.
I
Like-
actually thought it was pretty good.
I respectfully
Like-
disagree.
I know you do, and I know, like, humor's subjective, I get that, but, like, to me, that's worth something. That this show made me laugh harder than any show I can think of. And, like, there's the shows, like you mentioned, Osomatsu, that made me laugh too, but nothing made me laugh as hard as that moment. And I'd like to say, just, if it pleases the court,
Hey.
I'd like to say that just knowing how much this show pissed off Frank made me enjoy every episode a bit more.
That's fine. That's fine. I'll allow that. But I will say that there are shows that do that episodic nature, like, because it's like you said, it's not really a slice of life. It's more of a comedy. But like, there are shows that do that episodic formula, and they do it in a lot better ways. And
Yes.
there are a couple of them that are airing this season, and I won't get into them because I know it'll piss off the court. But
Do you want to call a witness, Frank?
um. Yeah, you know what? I was gonna make a couple more points, like how the actual plot itself makes absolutely no sense. But
There's
I feel
no
like
plot. It's not a show about plot.
But I feel like, well, the premise, not really the plot, more like the premise of
Yeah, it has a premise.
We can see shit now that we weren't able to see before, and somehow this justifies like everything. Like it really doesn't.
I can see why you don't like Space Dandy.
But it's just off the wall ridiculous, and then sometimes it doesn't follow through with that ridiculosity. Like
Ridiculosity?
Whoa! Everybody, just calm down. Put it away. Put it away.
Like, the first episode has that infamous scene with, like, the boobs shaking everywhere and whatnot, and she's trying to get under the limbo.
Which is great.
And then it doesn't...
That seems great.
But it's just so absurd that, like, you can't help but just be like, what the fuck is this
This
shit?
show is absurd!
No, but this is the point that I'm trying to make. So you have a scene like that, and then throughout the rest of it, you don't have that many other scenes that come close to that in terms of, like, setting the bar higher for the ridiculosity.
They were setting it lower because it was limbo.
You know what? Fucking First Witness. I call Michael Monks to the stand.
Oh my God. All right.
State your name and occupation for the court.
Okay. My name is Michael Monks. I'm a professional meme smith.
And what do you have to say for Myriad Colors Phantom World?
So, Phantom World... So I first wanted, as I mentioned before, to take a slight amount of umbrage with what you were saying. I quite enjoyed the little educational segments at the beginning of each episode. And I found... You said sometimes they don't tie into the episode, but I'm fairly certain that everyone did. To varying degrees, but they were all relevant somehow. And I thought they were very comfy little segments. So, let's compare here. Earlier I mentioned HaruChika, which explained a lot of just random concepts into its mysteries that didn't pay off and were just more obtuse than anything else. It's a bit different here, because it's just a blatantly fourth wall breaking, educate the audience segment. But A, it's explained very well, all of the concepts that they use, and B, the character is established to have like a very, he reads a lot, his bedroom is a library, he would know about these things. So it's very natural the way it fits into the show, and I quite enjoyed it.
If I may interject, I think that the one in the first episode where they're going through all the optical illusions and shit, and they have her kind of going through them, like, I like that, because visually that was very cool to look at, and it kind of played around with everything a little bit. And then nothing after that really did anything with the factoids that he was talking about to that caliber. Like,
they didn't. Like, there was nothing as visually interesting as that, and there was nothing as creative as that. But they don't exist to be satisfying in a bubble. They exist to kind of introduce and complement the proceedings that follow. And in that regard, I think they're all very successful. It's a nice little primer to be like, okay, this is what we're doing today. And then you watch the show and you're like, oh, this is how this fits in. And it works very well, especially as like the cold open that it was. So I can't find anything wrong with them, other than maybe that they took up time that could have been used on better things. But even then, I thought each episode was pretty briskly paced. Do you disagree,
no,
prosecutor?
Well, listen, I can see where you're coming from. I personally just didn't like it because it just had this feeling where, we have fucking Haru just talking at me and explaining this concept where, I mean, it could have been better off put into practice or done like it was in the first episode where, like, they actually, like, engaged you as he was explaining this stupid shit at me that I really didn't quite give a shit about.
Well, they did try to do that because they always have, like, either him or the fairies kind of doing
going
something.
on with a stupid banter, like, the whole time.
Well, no, not even the bants. It's like they'll just be there in the background, just doing something that's just animated, fairly well because it's KyoAni,
Right,
and it's just a little bit of eye candy. But it's nothing as interesting as the optical illusions. But I think that's more due to the fact that they were explaining optical illusions, which is just a completely visual thing. So of course it's going to be more visually interesting.
Right, but the whole premise of the show is more or less that things that were previously considered to just be like illusions are actually like actively engaging with people.
Right.
And I don't get why they couldn't do a better job of articulating like the ideas that they were bringing forth in a more visual way, especially considering it's KyoAni and everything's got to be like visual with them because that's like their thing.
But the thing is, rarely do they ever just have Haru standing there talking at the camera with no visual accompaniment. They might have like a cutaway to some diagram that's pretty cartoonishly animated as he's talking, or the fairy will be doing something to illustrate the concept. They don't ever just have a bland shot of him.
I don't
just
know.
standing.
The whole thing just felt very static to me.
Are you sure this is your witness and not mine, Frank?
He did not screen the witnesses beforehand.
Well,
I would like to call my first witness.
okay. Wait. My witness hasn't finished talking.
So, I forgot where I was going. So, I would like to step down from
your cross-examination, if you please.
No, I don't have any questions. I'm just gonna call my first witness.
Okay.
I like to call Ken Norton to the stand.
Oh boy.
Kenny,
Yes.
state your name and occupation.
My name is DARPA Chief. I'm the DARPA Chief.
Mr. Chief, tell me how great Phantom World is.
It's fun to watch.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Good.
I didn't enjoy it. I'm
Am
sorry.
I seriously done?
If you want to say anything else, go ahead, Kenny.
I don't know. To me, it just sounds like Frank's looking too deep into it. He's like sucking all the fun out of it. It's just like one show you just sit down and enjoy the characters and just just fucking watch it. The animation's nice to look at. The characters are fun to I don't think there's anybody I disliked in the entire show.
Like you compare to like the characters in Galko-chan who all have their own little cute little unique quirks and stuff, and you only have 7 minutes in Galko-chan every episode to get to really know them, whereas the characters in this will have their awesome little we're interacting with a phantom that connects with our childhood trauma or whatever.
Objection.
Okay.
Okay.
I would like to say that no one's saying that there aren't shows that do what the show is doing better, but it doesn't necessarily make the show bad.
There's also shows that do what this show is doing much worse.
Yes.
Beyond the Boundary. Frank, be very glad that you have not watched the entirety of Beyond.
No, I dropped that like a hot potato.
Because if you didn't like this show, you would absolutely abhor Beyond the Boundary.
Well, I did absolutely abhor Beyond the Boundary when I saw of it.
Yeah, just be glad you
The
didn't.
dialogue was inane. Like
We're not talking about that. Let's just
the characters were utterly unlikable. Like
Your Honor, getting
Steve.
off topic.
who's
Your Honor,
who's
can you
the
hold him in
judge here?
contempt so he shuts up?
Frank, do you have any more
I'm the
witnesses?
prosecutor here.
I wasn't done.
Well, Frank gets to cross-examine you.
No.
The prosecutor
Ooh,
doesn't
I'm not going to
cross-examine.
answer him.
Well,
Okay.
if Kenny's done, Kenny, are you done?
I guess.
No, you're not done. Continue.
He's done.
I'll cross-examine him if I have to.
Go ahead. I want to see this.
All right, Kenny.
I'm going to allow
This
this.
is unprecedented. Wait, you're the defense attorney. You're not the judge.
Am I?
Kenny, so you state that you like Phantom World, right?
Yeah.
So despite that, can you tell me what your least favorite part of it was?
The play episode.
Thank you.
Well, I refuse to let such animals like this testify in the court.
I'm sorry.
I
You're the
thought-
judge.
I thought
That's
the
the
play
only one.
episode
That's
was
the only
fantastic.
episode that stands out that I can think of that
The
I
cat
just
episode.
didn't enjoy.
The cat episode was good.
It was cute, but
It's
it was
not.
boring.
Why wasn't it good, Frank?
Because it started off like just being all cutesy, and then it just devolved into like random bullshit. Like
But that was the best part of that episode was when it just turns into this like crazy like psychological what the fuck is going on.
but it wasn't psychological. It was like pretending. To
Okay,
be
maybe not
psychological.
maybe psychological is too strong a word, but it was just very visually interesting. I will say I'm a pretty big animation person. So guru. So good animation can win me over in a way.
All right. I mean, like you have episode 4 where we have all Raina's cute little like phantoms with the fucking like crayon bunnies and shit, and everyone has cute little ears and shit, and then you go like to Karumi's Phantom World, like name drop whatever, Kurumi's Phantom World in episode 6, literally 2 episodes later, and it's the same kind of childish fucking Phantom World, but with a different spin on it. Like, it's 2 versions of the same thing. Neither of them are particularly engaging. Like, and can we also talk about how fucking stupid it was that they like mourned for the Phantoms at the end?
No.
Wait, what?
Like, like the fucking the Reina episode is like, you guys were better than my real parents, so I'll never forget you. Like,
Well, because
you went on a fucking bus and got brainwashed. All right, like, calm down. The Limbo episode, it's like, the totem poles were just trying their best. Hopefully, the wood will be able to serve humans better in the next life. Like, who the fuck gives a shit?
they're living
Wow.
creatures.
Who cares?
Like you
Does
and
someone-
me.
Does someone want to call Collin to the stand?
Colin, are you speaking in defense or in contempt of this show?
Oh, no.
Because I know you had bad things to say about the color palette, which I agree with you, because it wasn't as particularly engaging as some of...
I'll call Collin as an expert witness. Collin. You're really quiet, Collin.
So, my name is Fuck-Ass McAsperger's.
Okay.
Fucking
What?
professional poopy puffer, and I suffer from abnormally large left testy syndrome.
Is this relevant to the case?
Yeah, it is. Because watching this show inflamed my right testy. So now I'm just big testes in general, man.
Are you bouncing around on them?
Yeah. Play the kazoo, whatever, while I bounce around. So this show, I wish this show was fucking dumber. Because then I think it would have been more fun.
Are you talking like more like Konosuba?
Maybe, yeah. I'm just saying it should be more irreverent, and it should probably, it should have dedicated less time to fleshing out the characters' backstories, because as it turns out, the characters' backstories really don't reflect on them that much, or they
I
don't
mean, I
really-
just feel like
they
they're a
don't
bit of a waste
inform-
of time, because I'm not more invested by watching
they don't
them. I'm
inform
sorry.
the characters at all. They really don't like garner any laughs or even that much sympathy, because a lot of it just feels like ham-fisted, because again, they don't feel like they're reflected at all in how they act in terms of their backstories. It's like Reina has family issues, and it's like, okay, how does Reina act because of that? Or Mai is a recovering bully / has to do the Phantom stuff to get by and to pay for her living expenses.
She lives by herself. and
That's
her
never
parents
mentioned ever
aren't
again after the
around.
first episode, by the way.
Koito is a dick, but she's not quite a dick, and nothing about her backstory episode informs on this. And I just wish that, with these episodic series, because they don't really have any sort of overarching plot, I ask you, my friends, why did they spend this time on these backstories that don't characterize the characters? Because that's really important when when most of the stuff is disconnected. You should be able to like place the characters in different scenarios and have them be able to work. But I didn't find them particularly interesting. I mean, they were cute. Koto was cute as shit. But only Haruhiko, who is mostly pretty bland, has a backstory that informs on something that happens actually in the plot, or is relevant in any way, or affects how he acts. And I don't just mean the last episode, I mean also the episode where he's turned into a little kid. So at least that's relevant there. I tried my best to research animation techniques, because I feel like I was really missing out on part of what could make this show more enjoyable for me.
Light refraction.
Yes. Light refraction. Unfortunately, that stuff actually kind of hard to figure out when the show is new and you're not really quite sure who's done what. So fuck me. I don't know techniques. I learned about cubes though, and that was interesting.
I thought that the pixelation effect in the first episode was kind of cool. but then
And
they
they-
don't go anywhere with it.
Yeah.
You know?
That
Like,
never does
you-
appear again.
You have that whole cute little effect with Ruru, and she's banging on the alarm clock, and it's like just cubes, and then like it pixelates into existence, and like that's neat, you know. And then, like, where do they go with that? Nowhere. And
I feel like that's
go,
something that was. I feel like that was something in the light novel that, because of where the light novel goes in a very different direction. The light novel goes in a very edgy, post-apocalyptic.
That's what I've
direction.
heard.
Believe it or not, that's really, actually, honestly, kind of fucking stupid. Which is probably why they did not go that route, and also probably because they knew the show wasn't going to sell very well, and it hasn't sold very well, and they weren't planning on a second season.
Yeah, most KyoAni stuff, or at least KyoAni stuff more commonly than other studios, is actually fully completed in production, or at least close to it. Whereas other shows are still producing content as they're airing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas KyoAni is usually done before, so they'd probably know if they had a stinker on their hands early on.
Yeah.
Can I just say that another more competent show using this, like, kind of, I don't want to say Monster of the Week, but it is very Monster of the Week. And it would use that Monster of the Week formula as a means of deepening the characters' backstories in their backstory episodes. And the show doesn't quite do that.
What show?
What do you mean?
Well, you said there's a show that does that.
Oh, well, I mean, I can get into some examples. I can talk about, right now I'm watching Revolutionary Girl Lieutenant. And it's very Sailor Moonish in this current arc that I'm watching right now, because we have this Black Rose arc. And not to spoil Lieutenant that much, even though it's a fucking 20-year-old show. But the whole premise is that the members of the student council all have people that are relatively close to them, and these characters are kind of related to some kind of trauma that they're holding. And as these characters interact with the student council members, their jealousy grows, and they go over to the Black Rose, and they're basically drafted into this army that promises them that they can change things with the character that they're talking to, provided they duel Lieutenant.
That's not
And-
Phantom World.
That's not.
Well,
that show does sound, Frank. From what you described, that show does sound interesting.
That's just the current arc that I'm watching right now. So they duel Lieutenant, and as they duel Lieutenant, the characters that they're interacting with are aware of the people of the characters around them insecurities, and they grow as people because now all of a sudden they're aware of this trait that they did that they weren't quite aware of when they were talking to them, or that like someone's unresolved jealousy, or maybe like a love triangle that they weren't quite aware of. Like they grow as characters through their interactions with the monster of the week, basically.
Great. Okay. Well, we do need to wrap this up. So
Can I just say something very quickly?
yes, go ahead.
So
We didn't call you to the witness stand, so go for it.
okay. Well, I do have
In
notes for the
occupation.
show, but it is only a list of the various fetishes that this show employs.
Yes.
It's a good place to end.
I do. So this was something I just kind of did, and I didn't really like. I'm sure there's a lot more, but let me just read off this list really quick that I made off the top of my head. So first off, large breasts, brown
Got my attention.
brown/tan skin,
Mm-hmm.
fairy girl,
Mm-hmm.
mini girl, groping, face mole, thigh mole, just general thighs, face sitting, vor, shimapan,
Wait, hold. What?
Shimapan.
What's
shimapan.
that?
That is striped panties, as seen
Oh,
in the
okay.
first episode where he sees under her dress.
All right.
I mean skirt. Bloomers. Excuse me if I pronounce this wrong. Voyeur, or whatever.
Voyeur.
Voyeur.
Voyeurism?
Yes. Femdom. Tomboy. Tsundere. Lolly. Mind break. Mind control. Magical girl. brother-sister incest, 2 instances of mother-son incest, licking, bunny girl, bunny boy, cat girl, cat boy, cross-dressing, bestiality, rape, body
Monkey rape.
monkey rape, in fact, yes, body painting, school swimsuits, straight shota, fursuit, Yuri, inflation, transformation.
When was there inflation?
Paging Mr. Dobson.
When Ruru is eating, at one point she gets a very enlarged stomach.
I'm pretty sure that's a separate fetish.
It's still on
I
the
think
list,
it counts
so
as inflation.
I
But
believe
Alright,
it
alright,
counts
alright.
as inflation, transformation, and tentacles.
great. This show is great.
Matt is the alpha degenerate.
Sadly, I don't think we're gonna reach a verdict today, so we're gonna have to
why
say
don't, we
goodbye
let
to
the,
Phantom
why don't we
World.
let the audience decide?
Are we moving?
That's a
Omega?
great idea, Frank.
Omega, you decide. Is Phantom World guilty or not guilty?
Is it going to end in a continuation? Check out the next podcast.
No, I think this is probably this is not getting a sequel, so
Oh no!
I don't think we'll be talking
Well,
about it
I mean,
again.
I think we might have to revisit this trial at the end of the year podcast.
You know what? That's not a bad idea. So look forward to it. But for now, court is in recess, and the Lucky Cast will be right back. And welcome back to the Lucky Cast.
Lucky cast.
Now, Collin,
Yes.
I don't know if there's a suitable segue from Phantom World to Rakugo, so why don't you just take over, because I'm sure you have a lot to say about this show.
I sure do.
Yeah.
On the previous podcast, I talked at length about this show and how great it was. And I'll try my best not to retread the same talking points from that one. But in quick summary, it's a show that takes place in Showa era Japan, which is around like 1940s and 1970s or so. And it's mostly about 2 men attempting to preserve their art form, but it's also about their lives and how they go through them and what they go through. And if
And how women ruin everything.
yes, and how roasty whores ruin everything. If you would allow me to describe the show as succinctly as possible, and just throw out a bunch of descriptive words that would basically be nothing without me backing them up. Rakugo is it's beautiful, it's intimate, it's captivating, and it's special. The word "special" seems so banal for me to use because it's thrown around so liberally to describe things. But the show is such a rare example of fiction that's it's so personal and it's so tangibly human that I cannot help but say it's special. And it's personal, but it goes to painstaking lengths to have you, the audience, understand it. And it's not, and it doesn't, spoon feed you. It doesn't pander in a heavy-handed way or anything. You're not being like, like dragged by your alcoholic parent to the drugstore. It's more like someone who loves you a lot taking you by the hand and leading you to their favorite, like, ambiently lit romantic getaway. And that's how Rakugo pulls you into the world to personify it. And it takes place in a very important time period in Japan, but it shows you this through the lens of how the average person would probably remember it. Kiku talks about how it affected him personally, his craft, his ability to perform it. Rakugo doesn't really, that's to say the show, not the entertainment medium. Rakugo does not set its goals at, I want the audience to find the characters relatable. It wants empathy and understanding. And it's not concerned with you being familiar with how a character feels. it wants you to know who a character is. And I talked about what this show was, quote, about last podcast, and I listed off some of its themes, but it doesn't really go down when it's addressing these themes. It's not like it's going down like a checklist when it presents them. They feel very organic with the setting, the passage of time, what you want to preserve, what you want to change, and what you abandon altogether with the passage of time. These things are intrinsic to that era of Japan, but we only experience it through the Rakugo world. It is a just beautiful, just miserable story, and I love just all the character conflict that goes on within Kiku. Like what a human character! Oh my goodness! And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to Kiku, but again, it's not really about relating to him because he's so well developed that you can understand him because he's this sort of he's at times selfish and at times selfless. And he's just like this beautiful ball of contradictions and self-loathing, and you can see that he doesn't want the Yakumo name, with Yakumo obviously being the big boy in the Rakugo scene. But I'm sorry, spoilers, by the way. It's going to be heavy on spoilers. If you have not seen Rakugo and you're somehow listening to this, please, for the love of God, stop right now and please go watch Rakugo.
Go to this time code.
Yeah, go to this time code for no spoilers.
But when Sukeroko dies, the only way he sees to both honor his friend and preserve Rakugo is to take the name and hide himself in his work. And he's not just stricken with grief over this, but he's outright guilt-ridden over what happened. And we see that in how Konatsu was raised, because she ends up resenting him. And he almost feels like, at least I think, this is obviously a good interpretation, I think he thinks he deserves that. He deserves that resentment. Because even though what happened wasn't his fault, he still finds a way to blame himself. And they both end up bitter and alone. And oh my god, I'm sorry, I fucking love this show. That scene at the end where he's at the God, how do I say this? Is it Yurakate? Family grave. Kiku, he cannot even find solace in speaking his mind and letting it all out when he sees Sukeroku's ghost, as it would be, and this what should be this moment of catharsis for him is just a reason for him to pile on more regret and more pain. And God, because see, it's so great because the way they pile it on is just showing you the ghost of Sukeroko, and it would have been super hammy if he had said something, or it would have been hammy if he even made a facial expression. But he doesn't move because he is not there, because he is gone, and he feels that he has tarnished Sukeroko's legacy by I think he sees himself as a failure at raising Konatsu, and he doesn't. It offers him nothing, and he's just left as an empty shell, feeling all alone. And even in death, those feelings of inadequacy, and I talked about that in the last podcast, so that was a huge thing. That Kiku's feelings of inadequacy towards this slovenly drunk pervert. They cannot subside because Kiku knows that he himself would never be that force for change that Rakugo needed, that Sukeroko would have been had he taken the name Yakumo. And it's super interesting when they think about change in the flow of time and whatnot, and how if things don't change, they often die. And that's part of what, at least I think so, sort of in the theming of the show, why Rakugo has started to fade out. And Kiku kind of has a hands-off approach to it. In comparison, I think we're going to see that more in season 2, motherfucker! Yes! Because whereas his predecessor's race Stone Wall stops change, Kiku himself is not a force for change, but he's not going to stop it if it happens. And he's sort of passive in conducting it. And that's why when he gives his legacy to Yotaro, it's kind of a take it or leave it thing. Either you preserve Rakugo, or it's going to die with me. And I love, and Funk touched upon this, and I hope he talks about it a little bit too. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much.
No, you're good. You're
You're
know
fine.
more about this than anyone.
Okay. I love what names represent in this show.
Yeah.
Because for Kiku, I think the name Yakumo represented stagnation for him, because this was Yakumo as a person ended up being just a really petty guy who became the most popular Rakugo performer in the world. I guess in Japan. I guess that would technically mean the world. By exploiting his relationship with his father, and spurned a man who probably deserved it more than him. And then not only that, is that he stopped another Sukeroko from inheriting the name Yakumo when he probably deserved it more. And so the name Yakumo is kind of shameful for him, because it meant that he had to become someone else for someone else every time he was given a new name. And we go back to that because he's a man who looks for reasons why the way they are. Like, why did my life turn to such shit? And he can't find a reason, really, because that's kind of the tangled web of life. It's kind of hard. You want to find like a point where that's where everything went wrong, and it's not really like that at all. He's just sort of this guy who was, and again, mild George Lucas tier poetry here. He was a man who was kicked out of the path towards a feminine profession to a masculine one, and Konatsu is someone who's kicked out of a profession in order to pursue like feminine stuff. And
so dense.
Kiku was basically he fulfilled any role that he needed to. He was a student, a manual laborer, he was a performer, and he helped his friend get back on his feet. And he even took, like, when Miyokichi or Yurie or whatever the fuck you want to call her basically blames him for her life going to shit, he immediately accepts the fault for that.
Well, if I could interject here, the key notion I think of Kiku's character is that he's basically a man with no agency in life.
Yes.
He's, as you mentioned, he's just kind of flowing between different roles that other people prescribe to him. He starts doing Rakugo because he can't do what he wants to do. Then he only gets good at Rakugo because he's inspired by Skeiroku. And then he just kind of floats along, guided by other people's hands. Shit, where's I going with that?
That's okay.
No, it's a really good analysis, actually.
No, fuck you. I had a greater point that I was making here. Oh, right. Okay, so this culminates in the fact that the discussion that he and Skeiroku have in the bar or lounge, I think it was.
Oh, yeah, great scene.
So, where they kind of set a plan for Rakugo in the future. Kiku's the one who's just going to keep doing things as he's doing them. He's going to do old Rakugo, he's not going to innovate. And Skeiroku's the one who is going to, kind of change how things are and offer a new take on Rakugo to get more people in. But Kiku never takes like any initiative to change things because, as you mentioned, Collin, he's kind of indifferent to all that. He's not an agent of change. And that's just indicative of his whole character. At the end, in this one of the penultimate episodes, Yurie comes on to him in that hotel, and he just kind of accepts it and oddly licks tears off her face. Which sets into motion a series of actions that culminates in her and Skeiroku dying. So throughout the entire show, he never instigates a single thing, with the sole exception of searching for Seiroku to get him to do something.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of defines his entire character.
Yeah, and I think.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, all right. And I think that's why Yotaro is so important, and I'm so excited to watch him become the main character. I know you commented that back in the mid-season podcast that you didn't think he was very interesting, but now I'm actually really excited to see where it goes with him as the lead.
I agree,
because he's not just what Kiku isn't, but he's obviously very dissimilar from him, because he's not ashamed of having to fit the mold of the name that given to him, because there's that scene in the last episode where Kiku apologizes to him for giving him that name, but he says he's okay with it because he was looking for like a new lot in life, and that gave it to him. And it's interesting because rather than look to take the name Yakumo, he
goes for Seiroku.
he wants to have the name Sukeroku, and he's choosing for himself. And these people are all in this sorry state right now, and it's now going to fall on his shoulders to help them find contentment. And I'm so excited.
Well, I mean, it's because he's basically. I'm sorry, my bad.
I was going to say
that about this. It's so good.
It makes so much sense that he could have easily asked for the Yakumo name, right? But instead he asked for the Seiroku name, and it's so perfect because he kind of mirrors the more active force that Seiroku was rather than Kiku. It's like he's kind of that second coming. Everybody comments, of course, about how his Rakugo is really similar to Seiroku's. But what was most interesting to me, and I've spent so much time thinking about this, which is one of the things I love about this show. It really gives you things just to chew on for long after you finish watching the episode. It's got a lot going on. But when he asks to take the Seiroku name, Kiku's reaction, which is just like this horrified, super close up, and then the show just ends. And I think you can discuss that, like what that means, for a very long time. But it's like could be indicative of his guilt, could be any number of things. And I love it. It's just
I don't think he'd be bummed about the Yakumo name dying, though.
No, because it should have died.
In fact, I think part of the reason, besides maybe having a case of gay, I think part of the reason that Kiku didn't have kids was to ensure that the Yakumo name would die with him. And that's really sad.
It is. I mean, the saddest thing is when you're hearing his monologue and he's walking out on the stage and he just talks about how he just forgets what his name is, his real name.
Oh my fucking god.
Yeah. And
just one last thing I got to note about Yotaro's character, because I forgot, because I said he's not just what Kiku isn't. He's also what Sukeroku isn't, because they compare him to Sukeroku, but he's actually very different from him.
He's much more responsible.
Yes. He's accountable and responsible and wants to get his shit together and doesn't need anyone else to push him in that direction. God.
He actually takes on to be the one girl's father.
My wife's
as
son,
well.
Yes.
My wife's son. He allows himself to become a cuck. Take on the cuck name.
He's a beast.
I mean, the thing I love about Yotaro is that, like, his entire character arc is basically symbolic of, change and reform, which is what puts him so much at odds with Kiku, who, as you said before, he's basically just the stone wall who, is so resilient to change and just kind of wants to go. But he's the only one who really doesn't feel like he's being held back by his name. He wants to change, whatever way it takes to suit your name. I think that's something that he says. And, he doesn't really want to preserve the name as much as he wants to more or less reform it. And, like, he's all about just growth and change, which makes him such, I can see why you would think that, like, he's not as interesting at first, but I think that, once he's able to, like, really, get his hands on it.
Yeah, and
He's gonna take it in a new direction, which I think is gonna be really cool to watch.
The last episode does a lot of work in, framing him as a capable protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
My impression of him was based solely off of the first episode, and that was like halfway through the season when I had seen all that time of Kiku and Skeiroku, who of course are extremely captivating. But I agree that based off the last episode, I'm very excited to see where he takes the show as he takes the center stage. Huh.
Oh, and I want to note that this show was probably the first show that I watched since starting to watch anime season to season during the summer, that I really started taking note of visual storytelling and character body language. And I don't just mean during the Rakugo scenes. I mean scenes with like curling toes, tapping feet, whether or not they're making eye contact. Most important is how Kiku handles his cane, depending on how his emotional state and his dependency on it varies. Stuff like the environment, like when Kiku is talking about, giving that monologue about how isolated he is, how that's where he should be and where he deserves to be and what he really wants. And he starts to perform his Rakugo, and he starts to bury himself in his work. The audience itself just completely fades into darkness. And it's just really gorgeous stuff all around.
And that obviously references the Skeiroku's whole thing about, connecting with them and seeing their faces and how he loses touch with that.
Oh my god, the poetry power level is off the charts!
It really is a show about circles. Like, it's such a... There are so many cycles happening here, and it's really cool.
One, I guess, cycle that I spent some time trying to look into, I rewatched the first episode because I wanted to see the scene where Yotaro asks Kiku to take him on as an apprentice. Because in an earlier episode, that similar situation happens, and he just turns the guy away. And just never takes on an apprentice. They establish that that's something that he does. So I was like, what happened differently when Yotaro asks him and when this random guy asks him to make him take him on? And they're very similar scenes. Nothing differently happens. So that made me think, what's different in his state of mind now to make him take on an apprentice when otherwise he just never would have? And I'm curious what you guys think would be the reason for that.
Well,
I have reasons.
Okay.
I just
go ahead, though, Matt.
Well, I think the main difference is with the one guy in the I forget the guy, not the guy at the beginning, but the other.
Yeah.
But the one guy later on in the show, like in the other episode.
In the past.
Like in the past, he actually has like things to go back to. He just feels like he's kind of following Kiku because it's just something he wants to do. Like I think it's that Kiku didn't feel like he was super sincere, and he has a family. He can go back. He actually ran away from home essentially, when he clearly has ties. Like he has people to go back to, so it's not like and so Kiku was kind of like, you don't want to be in this business. This business is dying. You don't want to be here. So, run back home, you're just being stupid. Whereas with the other guy, I think it's more... Yotaro, is that his name? What's his name? Yotaro. He has no baggage anymore. Like, he has no family, he has no friends, he just got out of jail, he has nothing really to live for except for this. And I think that maybe he feels like there's just something more there since he actually has nothing else, and since Kiku also maybe Kiku also didn't have anything else really. He was kind of forced out of his home because he couldn't do what he wanted to do, and this was all he could this is all he had left. So I guess maybe he saw a little bit of him in Yotaro. Something.
Yeah. That's basically, you hit the nail on the head with everything there.
Well,
yeah, I mean, I think the fact that Yotaro is actually a reformed criminal, like, that's just so indicative of the fact that, everything about him is just so centered upon, wanting to shed himself of the person that he was prior. which I think makes it tie in really well with the theme of, him wanting to now take the bull by the horns and take upon this new name and, set upon a new age of Rakugo.
Is that all?
Go?
I actually want to hear what Steve has to say.
Yes.
I was wondering when someone was gonna bring me in here.
I was curious
Because I did want to interrupt anything you guys could say, because that's all very valid stuff that I don't really have much to contribute to, because I think I have a very different perspective on this show.
Oh,
Boy,
no.
I figured as much, because when you told me you were watching it, you didn't immediately say, at the very least, it's really good. You didn't follow it up with, it's really good.
Because I knew,
And I did not want to press any further than that, because I wanted to hear it from
You hit your score.
What's that, Frank?
You hit your score.
Yeah, I haven't scored it yet, and that's a good reason for that. Because I did want to say, like, it honestly, like, I thought a lot about this, because I really wanted to put my perspective into the show into a coherent form. So it may take a minute for me to get through this, but I'll try my best. So I do want to say I'm probably the only one here who did not like this show.
Oh my
Really?
god!
You outright didn't like it.
And I'm not here to convince anyone it's a bad anime, because it's not. It's a good anime, and even I can admit that, even if I didn't enjoy it.
Let me just ask: did you finish it?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I think it's a show that has flaws largely with pacing and its ending, which I will talk about. But otherwise, like, everything else about this show is really well done. But goddamn, if this wasn't one of the dullest anime I have ever sat through.
Really?
Oh, no.
And I want to
Sorry,
talk.
they don't have any super moves.
No, it's not. It's not that.
Sorry, it's not fucking Fan World where everything's gonna be fucking flashy.
Sorry, it's
Well-
not One Punch Man.
I'm sorry, none of the characters.
Okay,
had
wait.
extremely
Everyone stop
large
shitting on
breasts.
Steve. Everyone just stop shitting on Steve.
No, keep doing it. It's hilarious.
No,
I
it's-
enjoy it.
It's fine.
No, because I do want. I do want to talk about why I don't think this show did enough to capture my own personal interest, because it is a very different take on this. So, I do want to say the biggest issue I took with it. I went into the show, I think, like all of you, knowing little to nothing about Rakugo. But I think, unlike you guys, when I came out of the show, I did not develop an appreciation of this art form, because I don't think this show did anything to make this subject matter particularly interesting or engaging to me personally. Because I get it. I totally get what this show is going for, like, in terms of how it wants to portray the subject of Rakugo and these characters. The problem for me is just, it was so straightforward with its presentation of it, that if you're not into it, then it hurts the enjoyment of the show, which is what happened to me. And I just didn't feel like it took good enough advantage of the medium, with a few exceptions, but the Rakugo performances themselves really don't do anything visually interesting, or thematically interesting, and they failed to hold my attention.
Oh.
And I'll explain maybe how I think it could have done better in that. I would have much preferred that if these actual Rakugo performances were actually visualized, or tied strongly into the individual episodes, because really the only thing these performances do, from like a storytelling perspective, is they establish how each character develops their own personal style of Rakugo, which does work very well, and I like that. I do feel like you could accomplish the same thing without needing to spend, in some cases, half of an episode's running time with these very visually static and dry performances. Like, you can cut out a lot of these Rakugo performances, and you would miss very little in terms of the story. Because just the way they presented it was not entertaining to me. And it's frustrating because it just takes up more in the first half of the show, that it becomes lesser as the show goes on, but it takes so much of the show that I just could not get invested in it. Because
There's only one extended Rakugo sequence in the second.
no, there's
No, there's more.
there are a ton of them.
I think you have to define extended, because I think what you might say is extended is not what. Well, I mean, certainly is what Steve would say is extended, but he has a much lower bar for what he would call an extended.
I would say,
Rakugo
like,
season.
it's not necessarily just one performance, because sometimes there was just one performance back to back. Like, one character would do one, and then the next character would do one. I'm talking about, like, anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes of a show's
running time is an extended performance. And there were a lot of them, especially in the first half of the show. Like I said, I enjoyed the second half of the show a lot more because this was less of an issue. But honestly, that wasn't even the only thing that I took issue with, because just putting aside the performances themselves, I didn't find anything else in the show that I was invested in. I was never really able to get into these characters, because I didn't care about the Rakugo. I didn't feel like there was anything else in this show that was not about Rakugo. Like, every single action or motivation or just the bonds between the main characters, they're all tied together by Rakugo. Like, it's a very single-minded story about these characters who are trying to become, like, masters of this art form. And that's fine. Like, there's no issue with that. It just doesn't appeal to me. I couldn't find anything else in this show to be invested in. I didn't think there was an overarching message. I didn't think these characters grew as people and not as just performers, or that they learned any sort of life lesson, or just anything else other than Rakugo, at least until the very end of the show, which I felt at that point the character's development had reached a point where I could be satisfied, but then it's like it's swept under the rug by the death of Sukuroku in what I felt was one of the most laughably melodramatic and cliched death scenes I have ever seen in an anime. If I was more invested in this show, I'd have been fucking pissed, because I cannot believe a show that is as serious and grounded as this went that direction. Like, did none of you have an issue with that?
You know what? I'll be completely honest. That is one thing I had an issue with. I think, I feel like some of the stuff with the girl, what's her, Miyochi, whatever her name is. I'm terrible with these names. Miyokachi. I didn't really like some of the scenes with her and some of the conflict with her, because I felt like some of that was really melodramatic and over the top, because it had this had the romance that I don't really like, where it's like, oh, we have to die together and all that stuff that I just never am able to really get into.
Well, that's a Japanese thing.
Yeah,
That's a very Japanese thing.
See, but I did like how that tied in thematically to one of the earlier Rakugo performances.
Yeah.
But that's really it.
But that's
the actual execution of it was so bad.
It wasn't actually done.
That was the one thing I was looking forward to finding out since the first episode. Like, how did these characters die? And they picked the worst way to go about this.
Let me just ask you, Steve. Wait, real quick. So,
Yeah.
do you not think that the actual Rakugo stories that were being told at times didn't mirror the characters?
They did, at times.
And do you not think that that's thematically important?
But I don't think most of them did that. I think only some of them did that.
The
Like I said,
story,
but here's the thing. Like I said, I think they're important.
Sukeroku's last story?
No,
Absolutely.
here's the thing. I think they're important to developing the characters, like, obviously. But you could have done the same thing in a much shorter time frame. That's my major issue with it.
But you don't think they grow as characters through their Rakugo?
Yeah, I absolutely cannot.
They do, but I don't find Rakugo interesting, so that
You don't need...
I do. I felt I needed
becoming
to.
Rakugo masters. I don't understand. I don't understand why you think that this is their goal. Like, why you think this is the show's goal. I'm, like, heartbroken over this, that you didn't understand this.
It's not about Collin. It's not about not understanding. Because, like, I can't even, like, counter anything you said. Because you're entirely right. Like, in your assessment of these characters and this story. But there's just nothing else here.
What? It's like
No, I don't.
Show that I've seen in years.
But it only matters. It only matters if the show gets you invested in those characters, and nothing got me invested in those characters.
Oh my god!
It's a good show. It's
You're
just
a
not a good
fucking
Steve
fool.
show.
Well, I'm not going to belittle Steve, but I do think you missed the point.
I don't think I did.
I think the point is that you have to take the Rakugo performances and, like, connect them to what's actually going on with the characters.
Then make
Like,
them more entertaining or interesting to watch. Because it didn't feel like it went far enough. Like, there are times when they try to do that, but it's only brief flashes.
Okay.
Like, I wanted them to go all the way here.
So the scene where Kiku and Sukeroku are doing Rakugo together at Sukeroku's house.
Mm-hmm.
Did you enjoy that scene?
More than the earlier performances, yes.
Okay, because if you hadn't enjoyed that, I was gonna lose it. Objectively, maybe not objectively, but it's probably the best scene in the show.
Is it okay for me to kind of also chime in a little bit also?
Of course.
I kind of do want to say more about what Steve was talking about in terms of like making it more interesting to watch in terms of Rakugo, how it's just like kind of the staticness. That is, I will admit, like, even though I know the point of Rakugo is that the performers are supposed to be good enough that they explain things in such a way that you can just visualize it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they did a good job of that, but I will admit, there were times where I feel like it was like, okay, this is another Rakugo segment. I get it. But
that's exactly how I felt.
and
like
I
the
did
show.
like it though, but at the same time, it was like, let me just kind of go back to what I said about being really into animation. The main reason why I like watching, cartoons, anime, and all that stuff is because of the animation and all the creativity that goes into that. And I will say, this show has no reason to be animated. This show would be perfectly fine as like live action with actors and all that stuff. And I don't really feel like there's any reason for it to be animated. And I
Other
kind
than the
of,
fact that it's a manga adaptation.
other than the fact that it's a manga adaptation, and I do feel like they could have taken a little bit more creative liberties with making things a tad more visually interesting, but then again, this is Dean, so they probably didn't really have the ability to. But if they did a little bit more with making things interesting, like in term just visually, I think it could have been better. Like that probably would have made me raise my score to a 10. Because there were definitely some dull moments. I know I definitely wasn't so into the melodramatic romance stuff with the girl, especially when there were moments where something dramatic would happen and there would be this musical flourish. I was like, oh, like this really kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Huh?
No, I was going to say that. So, two scenes that I think were extremely visually interesting, both of which actually involve Yurie. The one is where she and Kiku break up initially, and then the second one is when her and Seiroku die. In whether or not you think they're melodramatic, those two scenes both show like a marked increase in visual flair.
Yeah,
I did
like. Yeah.
But the thing is, so they're capable of making these scenes visually interesting and unique when they want to. But I think it was a stylistic choice to leave the Rakugo as it was.
Yeah, and I
make it more
understand
faithful to.
I agree with that. Yeah,
I understand that, and
I just think that's a bad choice.
I don't think it's a bad choice. I think it worked, and I think it's good. Like I think it was good that they went that way. This is more of a personal thing, not really this is something the show did wrong thing. It's just personally, as a person watching this, partially for visual aspects, I don't feel like I feel like it may have been a bit more enjoyable, but yeah, that's.
I'm sorry, Colin. I'm sorry I've hurt your trust in me.
It's
but
Steve, I was with you for a minute there, and then it's like I was gonna be like, okay, I can kind of understand. Like maybe it wasn't for Steve, and then you just kept going.
No, it's not for me.
You cut me. You.
I did say.
I can't stand by you.
Lover suicide through podcasts.
That was a good one, Matt. I don't think anyone else heard it, but I did.
I did not hear
What
it.
did he say?
I said lover suicide through podcasts.
I do think we need to put a bow on it. So anything else you guys want to say about Rakugo?
I'm good.
Great use of music.
I found Sukeroku's final Rakugo, which acted as a message to his daughter, to be the most beautiful scene I'm probably going to see all year.
I find myself really skeptical of Miyokichi, just because like she's such a manipulative character, and we have such little insight into her narrative voice that I really don't know the direction where it's going to be going, and that really intrigues me.
She's dead.
She's kind of dead.
Yeah, well, like in terms
Kinda dead.
In terms of her backstory, though, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
No.
well, I mean, it's she's an interesting character because she's a shitty person, but she's a very realistically shitty person.
Right.
And I think what makes a lot of the tragedy in Rakugo really good is that it's not really just the sort of fatal flaw tragedy that they all brought on themselves, because a lot of it is just a product of their environment that they couldn't control.
Right.
Like it's funny because they're in a job market that is fading, and she was in a job market that was already completely gone. Poetry.
It rhymes.
Right.
To sum it all up, I just want to say that Matsuda did nothing wrong. That man gave his everything.
Sorry, Collin. Well, cheer up, because you get to talk about Gate next, but I do have to turn this over to Kenny. We've been down this road a few times before, and we always seem to end up at the same place. Let's try not to bully Kenny too much, but Kenny,
What?
you get to talk about Gate again.
I do. I'm not sure I wanna.
Well, you gotta, because I'm making you.
Make? You live in Canada. You're nowhere near me. You can't make me do it.
I mean, I can kick you out of this call
We're
right
very
now, Kenny.
professional on this podcast.
Wait, no, that's our plan. Put it into action. Quick.
There's no plan, just talk about Gate.
Okay, second season of Gate just leaves off with the first season.
Literally, they
Picks
cut the
up
show in
with-
fucking half.
Yeah, right. Bitches. Anyway, we finally get to fight the fire dragon, guys, after it just leads up to this epic moment and all that good stuff. I really don't know where to go with this, to be honest. It's just more of the same, but they actually they introduced a couple new characters like Evil Bunny Bitch, which I can't remember her name off my head. Tiole, I guess is how you pronounce it. But anyway, and Pina's brother, who's a complete fucking retard, which we'll get to later.
Would you say you enjoyed the second half more, less, or equal than the first half?
I don't know. I would say equal. The second season gets I would say a lot more graphic because it starts out with the peace talks that they were talking about at the end of the first season and stuff. Then all of a sudden, it just does a fucking complete 180, and then there's a fucking sex scene of Pina's brother's Zol's out.
Not just a sex scene, a rape scene.
A rape scene. Well, she's a sex slave.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah, it just does that.
She still gets raped.
Yeah. Fine. She's raped. Whatever. Anyway,
I can't wait for Omega to quote that one.
Oh no.
Go ahead, Kenny.
But anyway, what the hell was the one dark elf's name? Yao, Steve?
Yeah.
Their name? Yeah, she finally gets Itami to form a small squad, which isn't his original JSDF squad. It's Lele and
it's the harem.
yeah, it's the harem.
Lay,
Call them the
lay.
harem squad. So they go to the fucking fire dragon's nest, and fucking dark elves suck it up and just fucking get destroyed, eaten, and whatnot. And then I don't know. So you want to jump in here real quick? It's kind of just
Well, I actually really want to hear what Colin thinks.
Collin's just gonna bash it.
Hi there.
No,
Hi
I think
there,
he has.
everyone. Shh.
I think he has a very interesting take on this half of the season.
It's me. I'm back. I'm gonna talk about Gate. How is everyone doing?
We're doing good.
That's wonderful. So,
You gotta
Let
paint a
me-
happy little picture for us.
yeah, let me preface this with hearkening back to the shit I talked on Gate. I made fun of Gate for being nationalistic and xenophobic, and I regret doing that. Not because I don't think it's true, but because I think that is what Gate fans attach to as the only criticism people make of the show. And that's not true. I don't think it's wrong for a show to declare its love for its country or its country's culture and to take pride in it. I just thought the way that Gate did it was really fucking dumb. I also thought that there was a far more important criticism that Gate was really fucking boring. I think Gate understands the basics of heroics, but it doesn't understand sacrifice. And maybe it doesn't want to, but the show is worse off for it. The author, being former JSDF himself, refused to ever put them in a position to be compromised or rarely have any sense of danger for them. That would contradict his propaganda piece, obviously. So when this show started again, and we're back to nobles reacting to the awesome power of the JSDF for the 13th and 14th episodes in a row, I was ready to tear Gate's asshole again. Then something really fucking strange happened. Gate introduced a few things. Now let's talk about how Gate fucking surprised me with how good it was. So
Go on.
first we have the Tuka incident. This was the first interesting character and moral dilemma the show presented to us. Itami, who had thus far been a shining pillar of altruism, is now put in a kind of a compromising position of keeping up Tuka's delusions or forcing her to face her fears. Now, when he initially makes her take a fucking rocket launcher and tries to use it against Daddy Eater, that was kind of fucked up, and I don't know why it wasn't made out to be the colossal fucking mistake that it actually was.
You're telling me they didn't take that out of the handbook of how to deal with PTSD?
So that was super weird. But then Gate kind of got its shit together. It was since when they started doing the dragon fight, the fire dragon fight. Since the JSDF, wow, nice voice crack. I've been talking for a while. Since the JSDF were not actually present in the fight, we have actual stakes and consequences to it. Multiple characters die, but I mean, they're minor, but I mean, at least people fucking die, and there's like a sense of danger, and there's a credible threat on screen right now. And other characters, they have emotional catharsis. They reach like the peak of what their character, of like or turning points for their characters. They make mistakes, and there are setbacks, and they need to improvise in creative ways. Like when this episode ended, besides the fact where they introduced some random fucking shit for Rory to do, for like she meets some random person and the JSDF show up to save the day again.
You're talking about her sister.
Yeah, her sister. Rory's a shitty character. She's still a really shitty character that adds nothing to the fucking show, and I wish she didn't exist. But when this episode ended, I was agog that Gate had just impressed me so much. I was actually thinking, what the fuck just happened? Not only that, but the primary conflict of this cour of Gate actually focuses on what I wanted it to focus on previously. That's way more interesting than the JSDF just stomping these people. Instead, the real villain is pride and ignorance. It's focusing a lot more on what happens when this advanced civilization takes over a primitive one, and the politics of what happens when you put an incompetent leader in charge. And that's what stirs most of the conflict, and seeing how many of the lives they can preserve, rather than just focusing on conquering the area. So that made for a way more interesting conflict, and by the end of it, they actually planned out a tactical assault, and it was actually interesting to watch. What the fuck? I really don't have much else to say besides good job, Gate.
I want to know what you scored the second half of Gate.
I have not scored it yet because I wanted to keep it a secret.
I figured.
I'd give
Who's
it
with you people?
Well, because if I gave the score, everyone would be all like, "What, Collin? I heard you gave Gate a fucking 6 or 7 out of 10." Because I would score it a 6 or 7 out of 10.
What did you give the first score for reference?
4.
Okay.
So bravo, Gate. Also,
Yeah,
got to see more interesting aspects of the world itself. So
We did, yeah. And I want to say I enjoyed the second half. I enjoyed the first half. I thought it was a good show overall. But I do want to say one of the interesting things I liked about the second half, and maybe you'll agree with me, Colin, is that there was far less of a focus on Itami in this half of the show,
Yeah.
which I think the show benefited from. Because even when Itami was on screen, the focus was on one of the other characters, and they spent a lot of the season dealing with this issue of like trying to find peace between Japan and the Empire, which I thought was a far better story beat to go with. So yeah, I enjoyed it overall. I don't really have a lot to say about Gate, but I am happy that Colin gave it a chance and was pleasantly surprised.
I don't think I'd recommend it still because you still have to go through the first core, but second core, while much better, is not quite good enough for me to recommend the whole thing. But still, I am glad that I was able to go in with an open mind and not come here and talk shit, because I come here and I want to like the shows that I watch, especially since, it's kind of time consuming. So
At least it was better than Divine Gate.
yes, it was better than Divine Gate.
Can we get a master list going of things that are better than Divine Gate?
Man, that's gonna be a long
I
list.
gotta watch the rest of Divine Gate because there's gotta be something that's my number one worst show this year.
You gotta find a shorter list of what's worse.
All right, we're gonna take one final break, and then we'll come back and wrap up this podcast with a few more shows.
Yeah.
And welcome back to the Luckycast one last time, and I'm going to turn it over to Matt now, who's going to talk about Ajin.
Oh boy.
I think I said that right.
Yeah, Ajin, whatever. But yeah. So Ajin is the best show of the season that nobody watched because of its CG.
You're not
So-
wrong.
Well, it was also a Netflix show.
It's also a Netflix show that did not have subs on any of the regular streaming sites, Crunchyroll, Funimation, whatever. So none of the what?
Should be noted, I believe it's available on Netflix in America sometime
It
this
will
month.
be available on Netflix after the show has finally finished, in like eventually soon. But so I guess first off, I want to say, ask Colin, did you like this show?
Haha! Yes, I did like this show.
Thank God,
I
we
was-
finally have a show that we both like.
And I was a little bit lukewarm on it at first, and then Sato's wild ride began.
So-
and I hesitate to call Sato like the best character of the year or anything, but holy shit! And it's not the show was bad before; the show was still interesting before. But I don't think a character has breathed life into a show like Sato has. This man, this absolute fucking madman.
So, okay, so Ajin, I briefly described it in the mid-season podcast. So this is a show about in this universe there are certain people for whatever reason are Ajin, who are people who basically can't die. If they are killed, they are instantly, well, not like almost instantly revived, and they are basically hunted down because there's like a price, like people put a price on their head, they're hunted down and they're put into it. Like the government claims that they're being held in a place where they're safe, but in reality they're being experimented on in horrible, torturous experiments. They have these creatures that follow them around called IBMs, which stands for, I believe, Invisible Black Matter, that are like these ghosts-like.
Are there 5,100 of them?
I feel like that's a reference I don't understand.
Steins
It's a Steins
Gate.
Gate reference.
Oh, okay. But they're ghost-like entities. They're basically stands that humans cannot see unless they are in a state of extreme stress, which for some reason they become visible. They explained this in the show. I forget how, but they can be controlled. At first, they're not like under your control, but basically they're these IBMs are basically the reason why humans are Ajin, because for some reason these IBMs become attached to a person. So this show is very strange because it starts out with this character of K or Kai, whatever the fuck.
No, it's K.
It is K. Okay.
Yeah, Kai is the blonde one, and Ko is the orange hair.
K Kai. Oh, it's actually Kato, not just K.
Yeah.
But so
or Kaito.
Kaito. Oh my god.
Yeah, there it is.
So it starts out with K and his little adventure. Eventually he just kind of stops being an important character, despite the fact he's initially the main character.
Very strange.
And they also introduce this weird aspect about him where apparently he is like essentially a sociopath who cannot emotionally connect to people and just kind of uses people to his own advantage. And the only reason why he ever does good things is basically to make himself look good. Everything is to his benefit. It's very strange because it does kind of clash with some things that happen in the beginning of the show.
It's extremely strange.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure. I think the exact point this shift occurs is when he is escaping from the hospital, right?
Yes.
And the guy who's helping him escape, he has he's injured. He's fatally wounded, and right before that, they kind of flash to his sister who's in the hospital, and she makes a point about how her brother is trash.
Yeah.
And we already know, we knew that they had like a contentious relationship, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this was not the original intention of the contentious relationship.
No, I'm
'Cause
pretty
they
sure there was
switched
something
writers.
else there.
Yeah. But this is so strange because the guy he just risked his ass to help for him and his asshole friend to escape, because there were two doctors, right? One was an asshole, one was a nice guy. The asshole died.
Yeah.
But they distract Sato, who is infiltrating the facility they're in order for these doctors to get away. And then this other doctor, the nice one, gets fatally wounded, and they show the flash of the sister saying, "Yeah, my brother's trash, and he only does things to benefit himself." And then they go back, and he looks at the fatally wounded doctor, and he's all like, "Oh, he died." It's like
really, really,
really strange. I'm not sure if this was the exact point that the writing changed.
I don't think it was. It was actually. I actually think the original writer was planning on going in that direction, but maybe not to that like extreme.
Yeah, because he just had this really important scene where he chooses not to join Sato.
Yeah.
Where he chooses not to hate humans for the sake of his friend. And even after this, when we reveal that he's a sociopath, you know what the first thing he does after he escapes?
He helps the scientists.
He bumps into an old lady.
Oh yeah, that too.
And the old lady's complaining about her back, and he can just keep going, but he chooses to help the little old lady complaining about her back.
I think maybe it's because maybe he thinks that she might be able to help him because and it does turn out that's exactly what happens. He ends up living with her because now he's finally away from all the shitstorm that's happening over in the city.
But I'm not sure. It's kind of I feel a little bit conflicted about this because I think that even though this change is super weird, I think it makes him a bit more interesting as a character.
Yeah, it does.
Because now you need to spur this character on by making him do selfless things out of self-interest.
Yeah, and also we have his little relationship with Ko is his name, right?
Yeah, Ko.
The guy he traps in the truck.
Mm-hmm.
Like that whole thing going on as well. And I really liked that one scene where he actually ends up poisoning him.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, oh shit, wait a minute.
Yes, it makes him a more interesting character, and it makes him be able to do a lot more shady things without them feeling contrived.
Yeah.
That
but
being said, he's basically sidelined for the next half of the show.
because fucking Sato is the greatest person
Yes,
in the
because
show. He is fucking hysterically evil, and he loves being evil. And it just makes
it's just the most wonderful thing.
he is
Like,
so
like I've got my hands on my cheeks right now as I'm talking to Sato.
he completely takes over the show just because of how much of a goddamn madman he is. I love just to really show how crazy this guy is. When he first meets up with Kay, the first thing he does to earn his trust is have his partner stab him in the stomach and kill him to show him that he is an Ajin. And he just revives. Like, he doesn't even say anything to him. He's just like, hey. Partner comes up, stabs him, and he just dies. And he revives. And he's like, now you can trust me.
And then after his hospital rampage,
oh my god,
he basically reveals that like when the other guy, his partner, is like, hey man, you took a really long time, and he's like, I'm sorry, I was having a lot of fun. He's basically like, I'm sorry, I got distracted. Torturing this kid was just really entertaining for me.
And then I one of the best scenes. I really don't want to spoil episode 11 because I know there might be some. I know some of you might be watching it, but I can't. I really want to mention this. He fucking rides a falling building, crashing into another building, laughing maniacally as it's falling. And then it's so beautiful. It's fucking hysterical. And it's great. God. It is so good.
It's so engrossing. Like,
and the best part is his hat flies off as the building is falling. And when he revives, he gets back up, a drone comes in and gives him another hat to wear, and he puts it on.
Yes. Oh, also, I love how delightfully evil his cronies are. Like, immediately, because he invites a bunch of Ajin to, like, a secret hideout, and he reveals what his plan is, and he's all like, mass murder. And these two guys are all like, yeah!
And then obviously there's other ones. There's other people there that are like, well, we don't want to do this.
They put them all in drums.
And he's just like, well, guess we gotta kill you.
I kind of wish that other guy got to be a main character, but what's done is done.
Who? You mean
the bigger fellow? Although you like immediately when you look at this lineup of characters, you see like they all have like small eyes and everything, and there's this one guy with like big old bug eyes, round face, and then like a different colored hair from everyone else, and you're like, and he's also wearing like bright yellow where everyone else is wearing muted colors, and you're just like, I wonder who among these is going to be an important character.
Oh yeah, and there's also the other scene with Sato is when the police are like beginning to carry him away, and you think they're actually gonna get him, but then he gets his little ghost guide to like stop them from shooting him, and he just goes on this fucking rampage with a shotgun, and it's so good. Logically, it makes no sense. Because the police just become completely incompetent.
To watch.
It's like, so like this.
After he has his ghost guy block the bullets, like the ghost guy could probably wreck all of them, but he doesn't even use the ghost guy. He just goes at them with the shotgun
because he just loves killing people.
Although, okay, I do love that. I actually, even though like the police weren't exactly totally competent there, I did love that episode because it was a constant push and pull.
Yeah, that was a really great little thing. Even though they could have done some there were some inconsistencies, like why didn't they take away the shotgun?
Yes. Why didn't they take away his fucking shotgun?
I think what actually happened that they didn't really portray very well was that the ghosts, they actually did take away the shotgun, but the ghost brought it back.
Oh, okay.
I think maybe that's what I heard. It actually happens in the manga. People also are like, well, why didn't they just shoot off his hands? That actually does happen in the manga. They actually shoot off his hands because, and they couldn't do that in the show because censorship, violence, all
Part of
that.
the reason why I kind of wish this show, if it was on Netflix, since obviously you can get away with way more on Netflix.
Yeah.
Because you can't. It's often you can't really show this sort of visceral violence on Japanese TV.
Mhm.
And this show probably would have. It's unfortunate that this is CGI because I know it's an experiment, but you probably would have been able to do a lot more gore with 2D.
Yeah.
The CGI, you have to model like a bunch of different stuff just for stuff that's going to be on screen for a couple seconds.
Mm-hmm.
To create all these
despite that, I
assets.
Despite that, I think the show looks pretty good for
It
CGI.
generally looks pretty good. It veers into Donkey Kong Country territory.
But yeah, this was.
K's come out, he's got like, I'll shower you with coconut cream.
But yeah, this show is a pretty big surprise. I don't really have anything else to say other than
It's fun.
It's a fun show. It's not deep. There's no real. It's honestly kind of a stupid show, but it's hell. It's fun as hell to watch. Like I don't think I've watched a show that has just made me smile ear to ear as much as this one this season. It was just such a fun. It's such a fun ride.
All right. Next up, we got Sekkou Boys and Funk.
I feel a bit short changed because I didn't get a great segue.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't like. I didn't watch Sekkou Boys, so I don't really know what to say about it.
Something statue of limitations.
The trial ended a while ago.
That's bad.
So anyway, Sekkou Boys. There's not a lot to say. It's a short about an idol group, but there's a couple things that I liked about it. I like the fact that it's a show about an idol group, but the idols aren't just cute girls. It's it's very easy just to take the Love Live route, but they didn't stoop so low. And going along with this, I also love the fact that the Sekkou Boys are busts doesn't really come up a lot. Like people refer to them as being the Rockies, and they're shuttled around by their aide because they're busts and they can't move because they don't have muscles. But there's nothing really stupid like, oh my god, my nose broke off because I'm a statue. Oh, the comedy kind of evolves beyond that kind of ridiculous premise, which just kind of heightens the absurdity of it all because nobody really questions or cares about the fact that these guys are statues.
Also, the fact that apparently all busts in this universe can talk.
Yes. And it's just, it's never really made a big deal. So they had the clear-headedness to make that decision, except for the final episode where the conflict is solved because at one point the Sekkou Boys aide wrote something on the bottom of one of them. And that's like the key to figuring out the jam that they're in, which is kind of dumb. But
I thought that was funny. I thought that was cute.
It's just like the show has no real notable qualities. Like it's fine to watch. It's entertaining. I'm never gonna think about it again. But I think I mentioned this on the mid-season podcast. I may not have. But the best thing about the show is the ending theme.
That is true.
Which is completely fantastic and such a good pop song. But I really don't have that much to say about it. Matt, you watched it. What do you after?
I actually really liked the show. It was, I very much enjoyed it. I laughed at pretty much every episode. I thought most of the jokes were pretty spot on. I mean, obviously, like, some episodes weren't that great, some weren't that funny. There are some, like, I can't really think of a lot off the top of my head that were particularly bad, but, like, it's a show I enjoyed. It was a fun little short, but, like, I'll fully admit, this isn't really a show I'm gonna hold any special, like, it's not something that I'm really probably going to remember that hard, other than its really ridiculous premise. But, I mean, I enjoyed it, it was fun, and it was one of the better shows of the season.
Really?
I think so. Like, out of... It was... I was close to giving it an 8, but I thought really, it's not that good. It's just good. It is a solid 7, I would say.
8's much higher than I would have expected. I have no idea what I gave it. I might have given it a 7 too. No, I gave it a 6.
I gave it
8.
a 7.
Frank, why don't you say your piece on it since you apparently watched it?
I did watch it. I mean, I wasn't quite impressed by it. I mean, it was kind of just neutral. I think going back to it, I might change my score to a 6 just because I gave Galko-chan a 7. And between those two short animes, Galko obviously had a lot more heart put into it. Not saying that Sekkou Boys is a heartless show, far from it. But I didn't quite get the same impression that it was a labor of love quite like I got from Galko-chan. Even though I did think that it was pretty nice that I got to watch 2 short animes on Fridays, basically one right after the other.
It's very efficient.
Yeah,
your time.
The characters are I mean they're like I wouldn't say that they're unlikable. I think that their dynamic with the I'm blanking on her fucking name.
Yeah, I completely forget.
Yeah, but their dynamic with her is pretty solid. And I think it's pretty cute, but it's not exactly anything of substance, but I wasn't exactly expecting anything of substance, so it's not a big deal.
Are we at least in agreement that Giorgio is the best Sekkou boy?
Yeah, for sure.
And
is unanimous.
Medici is the worst.
Of course.
He is the toddy of the group.
He's such a little shit. I do like that how they all seem to have like typical idol personalities.
Yeah. I mean, it's clearly supposed to be a parody, but like
right, and it's very I guess true to life in that regard. But it's such a paper thin premise.
Yeah, but it's not trying to be anything more than we have these busts and they're idols. Like I mean,
no,
it's a show that's founded upon that joke. Like
and it's not fine art. It's not Rakugo, but I even recognizing what it is, I still think it fell a little short.
I did like all the little visual gags throughout the show, such as when they're eating and at random points, like Medici or someone will have like a spoon on their nose.
Yeah.
Or like there's one episode where the manager and Medici are like I think what?
Well, I don't know if that's her position manager, but her name's Ishii.
But yeah, they go like they're following one of them and they
Ishimoto, that's her name.
Yeah, they're following one of them because he's apparently doing something secret and he's apparently doing this marketing stuff, but when he reveals something, it's like all shining and you'll never know, and I didn't actually notice this, but like during this very short little thing where like there's this really bright shine, you see Medici with sunglasses on in the background. And it's such a quick little gag. There's like a lot of little gags like that are just funny little attentions to detail. That's just really great. Things like that, I think, make the show
give it a little more heart.
Give it a little bit more heart to it because you can tell. Oh, that's cute. Like they were clever with a lot of stuff, but it's nothing like. It's certainly nothing that I think any of us are gonna like look back and hold to our heart or anything like that. It's just it's a dumb show.
I can't help but compare it to Galko just because they're 2 short animes. They're in the same season.
Yeah, but other than that, they're nothing alike.
No, but like just in terms of the amount of quality that goes into both of them,
right?
I think there's a clear discrepancy between them both.
Yeah, I just think that comparison's a little unfair.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't be holding it to the same standard.
So yeah. That's it, I guess.
All right. So then, at last, we come to Dimension W, and as this podcast's resident Dimension W Defense Force expert, yes, I'd like to start off by saying I thought the series was solid overall. Like I gave it an 8, and I'll stand by that.
You ready? You ready for the honorary podcast?
Oh no!
Please don't make that a thing. But
I thought I was gonna go a fucking full podcast without doing it, but. Whatever.
I'm glad I can give you an opening. But if you want a detailed explanation of what this show is about, go listen to the mid-season podcast because I talk at length about what the premise is. But if you want a Cliff Notes version, you got a loner guy, he hates coils, you got a robot girl and a chest vagina. You got a dead wife, you got parallel universes, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, we good?
Were they married?
Uh,
No,
Actually, they weren't.
whatever. She was basically his wife. So let me start off by saying what works in this show. I think Dimension W builds itself a really solid and interesting universe, and I think that's the thing that, like, one of the things at least that kept me the most invested in the show. And I know that sort of thing's not going to hold a lot of weight for everyone, but that's the thing that matters a lot to me.
Lay sci-fi, man.
Yes. I think this anime had solid action, and, like, at no point while watching the show was I ever unentertained or bored or anything like that. But I think the thing that works best is just the characters and the relationship of Kiyoma and Mira, because I think at its foundation, like, the story of the show about this guy who hates this coil technology being forced to confront his past and regain his memories of what happened to his quote-unquote wife, and, like, just struggling to come to grips with all that while also dealing with this robot girl who's, like, the literal embodiment of said dead wife. Like, I think that stuff all works really well, and, like, even when the rest of the show is getting bogged down by all the other stuff that's going on around this, I still found myself really enjoying the journey that these two characters went through, and I liked where they ultimately ended up. But now, with that all said, let me be real here. Dimension W is pretty much the anime personification of we may have gone too far in a few places. Because I thought what this anime desperately needed was more focus, and it needed to really scale back in many regards. Because in the latter half of the show, they just start introducing way too much stuff, like, on the periphery, that you end up losing that focus on the main characters and their story. And I think the biggest example, probably the most egregious I can give, is just the concept of Dimension W itself. Like, because when we're first introduced to it, we come to find out, like, this crazy infinite energy source, like, causes all these weird dimensional anomalies that can just fuck shit up. And that was really cool, especially the way they visualize that. And then they kind of introduced this idea that like the whole thing is actually powered by every failed alternate reality that never came to be. And I'm like, that's fucking awesome. I'm totally down with that. But they keep going and they don't stop. And we get to the point where they're basically just having Dimension W do whatever the fuck they want, and they don't have to explain it. And that turns the finale of the show into a bit of a clusterfuck, which I think was my biggest issue with the show. It didn't stick the landing, because I was with it up until there, and I liked where the main characters ended up, but everything else is just like, they just stopped explaining things.
Well, let me go on record and say I was skeptical of this show in the mid-season podcast, and boy was I right. I thought that this show, Dimension W, that is, just was thoroughly unengaging throughout, and then graduated to full-on boring by the end of it. I just didn't latch on to any of, Kyoma's motivations. Kyoma. I thought that he was thoroughly uninteresting as a character. Like, I see the setup, guy hates coils, paired up with a robot. Okay, that's a buddy cop film. That's not something that is making for compelling television.
What if you like buddy cop films?
Well, I mean, I'm so sorry, but there's still buddy cop films at the end of the day. And then maybe if they had used had a full season arc instead of a bunch of smaller ones that really seemed like a little more than Monster of the Week, but basically Monster of the Week, because they had so little relation to each other, I would have been more interested. But I just didn't. I was just always bored. The friggin' haunted house arc I hated. I was hoping that the final arc would be like a Wacky Races arc, because we needed another one of those this season. But it just ended up being like boring, because it introduced all these shitty characters.
Given the characters, it may as well have been a Wacky Races arc.
Fucking Superman. They introduced.
You didn't like the Diggers?
I didn't like this.
They introduced the Scandinavian mole men.
They introduced Black Frankenstein.
They introduced the African boy pussy.
And basically it all culminates in the worst I was about to say boss battle like it was a fucking video game. But just the
May as
worst.
well.
That's what it is, though, basically.
Yeah,
Like,
I didn't like the villain of Seameyer. I didn't like how
Wait,
it resolved in Seameyer? Shimaya?
What?
Wait, they introduced a villain in this show?
Did you finish it?
No, yeah, I did. I'm just joking.
Oh, okay, yeah. I didn't like him. I didn't like how it just ended in him having a big monster mash to fight. And I was particularly offended by Kyoma saying, "This is the last spin dart I'll ever throw," and then in the immediate next scene throwing another spin dart and alluding to the fact that he's going to throw many more. I thought that was egregious.
So
Egregiously bad, you mean.
Yes, not egregiously great. Like what?
um,
Of course, egregiously bad.
egregious means bad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So-
That just made me noticeable.
Go ahead, Matt.
okay. So I started off thinking that the show is going to end up being like probably my second favorite show of the season. I also started off the season thinking that Erase was going to be my favorite, but Dimension W is like, it is just a complete fucking mess.
Wait,
This is like,
hold on. Before you continue, egregious can also mean remarkably good.
Thank
okay.
you,
Really?
Colin.
Wow.
But this show, this is like the
Technically
definition of, this is like this is like a great example of how to ruin a great premise. So it starts off with this like kind of, sci-fi almost. I kind of got a Blade Runner-ish kind of feel from it at first, and it felt like it may have been doing something like that. And then we get to Haunted House, and I'm just like, wait a minute. And then they're like, oh, these are Dimension W ghosts, and I'm like, what? And then it's like, oh, by the way, Africa. What? And then it's like, hi, we're mole people. I'm Superman. This is Medic, and I'm just watching this like, what is happening in this show? And then we get to this final episode. That final episode was one of the biggest clusterfucks of a mess I have
Let's try and combine everything.
ever seen. I'm just watching what's happening, and I'm just like, what am I even experiencing here? We have like giant robot wife who's controlled by her disembodied hands and eyeballs or something. I forget what that was.
Disembodied hands.
And then suddenly Mirai's like, here, let me just go into your mind to make you remember. And it's like, wait, what? When
No,
could
but
she do
Dimension
that?
W can totally do that.
It's like, when could Dimension W do? What is
When they made it up right there.
What
It's
even
Dimension
is
W. I
this?
ain't gotta explain shit.
Right.
That's basically what it is. Yeah.
And then Kyoma's just like Kyoma, who has no reason to say anything like this, like says to the bad guy before he beats him, he's like, before he like kills him, he's like, don't forget your, like, don't do, I don't even know what he says, but he says something that's almost like supposed to be like telling the guy to redeem himself, but then he just fucking kills him, and it's like, what? It's just, I was just watching this like ending, and I was just like, what even happened to this show? Like, what is this? What is this show trying to be?
Because it had pretty universal praise from us, except for me, of course, because I was right.
During the
when it
mid-season
started.
podcast, it was like, that's when the denials started. I was like, when the mid-season podcast happened, it was just when the Haunted House arc had ended.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, did I miss something? Is it me? Am I what's wrong? Dimension W can't be veering off this fast. Like, it was going pretty strong before. I was really enjoying the world building. I thought it was going to be more about the world. And it really ended up being a bit more about a personal journey for Kyoma.
Remember the first episode when they're talking about like where it's like all this energy crisis stuff, and then
Yes.
it's like these things power energy? Remember how that didn't matter at all? Because that was never brought up again?
I don't. This is this. You want to talk about a show that really needed two cores? Oh my god!
I don't think 2 cores would have really saved this because
I think it would have. You give this
I-
thing some breathing room, dust it off a little bit.
I don't think the issue is with the show itself. Well, the adaptation as much as it is with the source. Because I've heard the source is just as shit.
Wow, that's too bad.
I'm not even kidding.
I'll have to let you know. I've read the first volume of the manga, and it's pretty much exactly what happens in the anime. So I'm gonna keep reading it, and I'll let you know if it also goes off the rails.
Yeah,
I'm
see,
sure
I
it
was
does.
actually I mentioned on the mid-season podcast that I was thinking about reading the manga, and towards the end, by week 12 of the season, I realized I was 4 episodes behind on Dimension W. So I was like, wow, Dimension W did something wrong, and it couldn't pique my interest enough for me to even read the manga. I was so... Because I was so interested in this anime because it felt like something from years past. It felt like something familiar and something fresh in terms of the sci-fi setting.
Yeah, like a throwback to like the 80s or 90s or something.
Yeah, well, even mid-2000s of like adult-focused anime. You know, you have a mature character. Oh, by the way, I was wrong. I thought the main character was like in his 50s. He's actually in his 30s.
Yeah, he looks a lot older than he really is.
No, I don't think that's the case. It's not that I thought I looked older. I just heard someone wrong. You just shouldn't trust those random people on the internet. But I was. It's like a blur. The last like 4 episodes or so of this show are just a blur of what the fuck is even happening. I can't. I didn't take a single note on this show because it just completely lost me. You can tell I didn't take a single fucking note as I'm talking about.
This
I gave it a 5 out of 10 because I think it was actually half good. It's the truest definition of a 5 out of 10. Its concepts and everything half good. I thought it had a really great framework to work with, and then it's like it just pooped the bed.
The show has a 7.43 on Mao. How?
I'm so just lost and confused, and I'm just Dimension W. Help me out, and it's just like speaking in tongues to me.
I actually initially gave this a 6, and then I was like, you know what?
I'm stuck on the 6 because I'm pretty hard pressed to give it a 5, but it's a very low 6. Don't get me wrong.
What did Kenny think of Dimension W?
Kenny gave it an 8, so I mean,
Well, let's hear his thoughts, Kenny.
Quiet, I'm watching Dimension W.
That's right, it's on tonight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're
No,
getting
it's
close
just
to the end
I
here, so
enjoyed up to the first half, and then the second I was just like, nah. And then that final battle, I was just like, what the fuck?
but it
Man,
was
even
still
8 out of 10, Kenny.
I felt the exact same way, and I gave it an 8. But I'm not gonna
Still-
fight any of. I'm
still
not gonna fight
enjoyed it.
anything any of you said because you're also right.
This show is
I feel like
Mad
Steve
Libs
just
the anime.
exists on a different
It really
wavelength
is Mad
than all
Libs.
of us.
I do, Colin. Like I can't even deny it.
It's like they have a dartboard and the dartboard has like all different shit on it. And,
No.
like, one time
You know-
they hit like haunted house, and one time
You know that episode of South Park where they reveal how Family Guy episodes are
yeah,
made
with the manatees, like
with the manatees? This is that show.
All right. Does anyone have anything of substance left to say about Dimension W?
I don't think so.
The dub is terrible. Don't watch it.
Great. Thanks, Kenny.
Robot Girl is cute.
All right, so we're gonna wrap this up with a brand new segment, and
Oh, no.
everyone on this podcast is gonna give their top 3 anime of the season, and we're just gonna do this really quick. So, Funk, can you start us off?
I forgot about this.
Oh no.
Number 1. I'll start it. Yeah, number 1, Rakugo. Number 2, come back to me.
Okay, Kenny,
What?
what are your top 3 anime of the season?
Do I start number 1 or number 3?
Whatever you want to start at, Kenny.
Okay. Number 3, Dimension W. Number 2, Konosuba. Number 1, Gate.
Great, Frank.
Number 3, Konosuba. Number 2, Rakugo. Number 1, Erased.
Okay, Matt.
Number 1, Rakugo. Number 2, Konosuba. Number 3, Ajin.
Fuck, I forgot your name for a sec, Collin.
Whoa!
I was just staring at Redefense Force, and I'm like, what's Redefense Force's name? It's late. Go ahead, Collin.
Little split. Number 2 is Konosuba. Number 1 is Rakugo.
Active raid.
What's your number 3?
Oh, I erased.
Okay. Funk?
Okay, number 3, Tagmachi Late Show. Number 2, Erased. Number 1, Rakugo.
All right, and for me, I got 3 Konosuba, 2 Galko-chan, 1 Erased. And
I hate Steve.
Really?
I cannot forgive this.
Fucking Steve.
Tune into the next Luckycast where Collin kills me. But that is going to wrap things up. You know what? For what was largely a slow and not a lot of shows airing in season, like anime season, we talked a lot in this podcast.
I'm so happy with how eloquent Collin and Funk were with Rakugo in particular. Like, what a great analysis of a very deep show that Steve just completely...
Hey, I listened to every word Collin said, and I also appreciated what he had to say about the show.
But you didn't agree with it.
So?
Well, on that note.
You have a wrong opinion.
On that note, we're going to end this, so say goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.